Hello, Dr. Durkin.
Hello, Mr. Bishop.
We're all ready to go when you are.
All right, let's hit it. It's 4:31.
Okay. The August 2020 meeting of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission is about to be convened. As a precautionary measure to reduce the spread of coronavirus, all town buildings are closed to the public. Therefore, this meeting will be held by remote participation. My name is Kelly Grant, and I will be moderating participation for this meeting. I will now turn it over to the chair of the meeting.
Thank you, Kelly. My name is Ed Hoops. I'm the chairman of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission. I will begin by taking a roll call for quorum. David Bernstein.
Here.
Rick Bishop.
Present.
Tom Durkin.
Here.
Ed Hoops is present. Paul Huggins.
Here.
Ellie Lawrence.
Here.
And Pat Pat Mulhern here. Did she get back?
I don't see her at the moment.
Right now.
I don't see her.
Okay, so we have 6 of 7 commissioners present. With the quorum present, I will now call the meeting to order, and will now ask the moderator to explain how remote participation works.
Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the Governor's March 23, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access and participate in the proceedings as provided for in the order. Persons who would like to view this meeting while in progress may do so by watching via this virtual meeting or the live feed on the Town of Yarmouth YouTube channel. You may also listen to the meeting by dialing into the number provided on the notice of meeting. We will also post a recording of this meeting on the Town of Yarmouth's website as soon as we are able. Please be patient as we work to overcome technological challenges with the virtual meeting. To reduce confusion, all participants of the virtual meeting are muted by the moderator. As participants are called upon to speak, they will be unmuted. Applicants can use the raise hand button or press *9 on their phone to identify themselves to the chair. The meeting host will then unmute applicants when they're called upon to speak. During the portion of the hearing designated for public comment, the chair or moderator will ask who in the audience has any public comments or questions. Members of the public attending this meeting virtually will be able to make comment using the raise hand button within the virtual meeting. If you're dialed into the phone number, you can press *9 on your phone to indicate that you would like to comment. Please wait for the chairman to recognize you before speaking. Members of the public who wish to provide comment are asked to identify themselves by first and last name and affiliation for the public record and then provide their comment. Prior to concluding opportunities for discussion, comment or question, the chair will ask a final time if anyone wishes to speak on the matter. All votes will be roll call votes. After a motion is made and there is a second, the chair will ask the moderator to take the roll call vote. The moderator will then report that vote. All motions, decisions, and documents and letters will be verbally read into the record. If it appears the meeting cannot or should not proceed, then the moderator will recommend the chair request to continue the hearing to a later date and time and/or until public meetings can resume normally. I will now hand the meeting back to the chair.
Thank you, Kelly. With that, I will start with the first order of business, which is a request for determination of applicability. So for Olaf Weedhaus, 79 Webster Road, Yarmouth, Massachusetts, proposed construction of a shed, retaining wall, and associated mitigation within riverfront area and the buffer zone to a salt marsh and land under water body. And I think
I have unmuted the applicant, so he can go ahead and speak.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
yes, go ahead and make your presentation.
Okay. When I purchased this home, I wanted to build a shed there. So I went to the town and asked what I needed as far as permits are concerned, and they gave me a building permit to fill out, and I did that, not knowing that this was considered wetlands and that it would require an additional permit from your committee. So I was given the building permit, and so I erected that shed, not knowing that I would need the other permit too. When we started removing the Phragmites from this area, we also noticed that there was a small retainer wall built by the previous owners out of landscape timber that had deteriorated and rotten. So as part of kind of redoing my lawn and the backyard and removing the Phragmites, we replaced the rotten timber with the same size retainer wall there that you see on the picture. So I'm basically asking for permission for this in retroactively. And I discussed this with Kelly when she did the site visit. And what I'm asking for is for, in lieu of having built the shed there where it is, that we would convert this area of the lawn that you see on the right side there, approximately twice the area of the into plantings of natural, like native plants there, in order to compensate for the fact that the shed was built there.
All right, thank you very much. I'll turn it over to commissioners. Commissioners, any questions or comments?
Nope.
No.
No? We're all good?
I think maybe we should get together with the building department, because if they permitted this shed without knowing that it was in the wetlands, we're sort of working against each other. So that may be something we want to look into at some point. But that's the only comment I have at this point.
Okay, yeah, I think we should check into their process. They I don't think they have any, they don't consult Oliver, do they, Kelly?
Generally, they're very good at picking up when a property is within wetland jurisdiction. There is a check on the building permit application where property owner is supposed to declare if there are wetlands on the property. But they also have a check in terms of, I think in the system that they check whether there's wetlands jurisdiction. So this doesn't happen very frequently, but it comes up now and then.
Okay, all right. Any further discussion among the board? Is there anybody in the audience who has any comments or questions on this project? If you do, please raise your hand electronically. I don't see anybody. Last chance among the public for any comment.
I don't see any hands raised.
All right. If not, then could I have a motion for a -3 with the planting condition being added on?
So moved. Bishop.
All right, thank you, Rick. Second.
Second, Ellie.
All right, Ellie, thank you. Kelly, would you take the roll, please?
Bishop,
Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Hoops,
Aye.
Huggins,
Aye.
and we don't have Pat. So the motion carries 6-0.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Mr. Viethaus.
Thank you.
Mr. Kelly, just to let you know, I've seen Pat on here twice and disappear twice.
Okay, she must be having some technical difficulties. I'm on my phone in case she's trying to contact me.
Oh, there she is. She's back. I see her now connecting.
Okay.
Connectivity problems. You gotta love it. All right, next order of business is another request for determination of applicability for Mark Sedaris, 16 Headwaters Drive, Yarmouth, Massachusetts. Proposed construction of an in-ground pool with spa and fence enclosure within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetative wetland. Robin Wilcox, are you there?
I'm just allowing him to speak now.
Oh, he was there.
Yep. So he's allowed to speak now. So try your audio.
Okay, Robin, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Robin Wilcox from Sweetser Engineering. This is a little over an 1.25 acre parcel of land immediately south of Buck Island on Headwaters Drive. The It's an existing house, existing septic system. The gentleman would like to install an in-ground swimming pool in the backyard, move the shed around slightly, and erect a fence to be in compliance. There's also a proposed addition on the side of the house, which is a one-car garage as well as a working shed and a bathroom in it. Several years ago, when the subdivision was done, there was a 60-foot wide easement placed on the extreme easterly side of the lot to cover Thornton Brook as well as the BVW, which goes through that particular area. We are approximately 60 feet away from the BVW with our proposed fence, and our actual construction of the pool and spa is 79 feet away.
All right, thank you, Robin. First among the commission, any questions or comments?
No question.
I have a question. What are they planning to do with the pool? Is it a saltwater pool or a chlorine pool?
It's a saltwater pool.
Okay, so Robin, you know then there will be a condition to pump the salt water and remove it and dispose of it properly off-site.
Agreed.
All right. Anybody else among the commission? I forgot to do it last time, so I'm gonna go to Kelly first. So Kelly, do you have any comments or questions?
That's okay. Yeah, I just wanted to ask Robin if you could include the pool condition on the plan, because often the RDA document doesn't get looked at again after it's been issued. So the plan is important that it include that condition. So I can send the wording of that for you to update the plan with that. But
No.
otherwise, I think on the report I put -2, but I think it's -3 because it's buffer zone.
Agreed, Kelly. I forgot this was an RDA, so I will put a note on the plan for the proper disposal. And I'll get you a revised plan.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Robin. Anything else, Kelly?
That's it. Thank you.
All right, anybody in the audience who has a comment or question about this project? Again, raise your hand electronically. I see none. This is your last chance. All right, so I'll move back to the commission unless there's any further discussion. May I have a motion to for a -3?
So
Tom Durkin.
All right, Kelly.
second, David.
All right. Kelly, you want to call the roll?
Bishop,
Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
I'm here now. This is Mulhern.
I said aye.
Hoops,
Aye.
Huggins,
Aye.
and I got Mulhern. So the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Robin. And let the record reflect that Commissioner Mulhern did join for that hearing. So, all right, next order of business is a request for an amended order of conditions continued from August 6th, 2020 for SE 83-2206 Great Island Ocean Club Homeowners Association Beach Parcel off Powers Lane, Yarmouth, Massachusetts, proposed expansion of previously permitted beach raking area. And I know Mr. Doble is there. If you could bring him on.
I will just find him on the list and allow him. Okay, I have unmuted him.
Okay, Mr. Doble, are you there?
I think you need to unmute yourself at your end. Oh, there you go.
Okay. George Doble for GIOC Homeowners Association.
All right.
Are you going to update how we left off last time, or should I go right in?
Well, I'll just, what I'll say, we were waiting for, mostly for a natural heritage endangered species program comment. We have received that letter. The only thing that they've added that they kept the same conditions that were originally on the original order of conditions. They've also added the following condition as well for this amended portion, that between April 1st and August 31st, raking of the tide line shall only be carried out when nuisance or health risk conditions exist. And I think we'd like to add to that, that raking during this period be approved in consultation between the shorebird monitors and the conservation administrator. So I think we've gotten the comments back. I don't know if you have any more questions or any more presentation, Mr. Doble, or do you want us to go right to questions?
Now, I'd like to make some observations by the members from the last meeting. At the last meeting, a member stated that when he walks on our beach in the morning, he doesn't see any shells. Per the pictures, low tide is always in the morning. And yes, if one walks on the firm sand near the water where everyone walks, there's usually not any shells. However, if one were to walk further up in the real soft sand where we sit during the day, as you'll see in the pictures, there's many sharp shells. We're not trying to make our beach into Miami Beach. We're just trying to make it a bit more user-friendly for all. As you know, the town beach next door to us rakes with a big tractor, huge beach raking machine weekly. Number two, the beach chairs were observed by a member in the dunes, actually to the right of the town beach. Per the picture, they were abandoned in the dunes. I removed them, and as you can see at our beach entrances, we require removal at the end of the day, and most people comply. The third thing, a member stated that the plovers feed on the remains in these decaying shells, and the shells retain the sand which build the dunes. I checked with a PhD Audubon program director. She said that actually the shells are not a primary source of food for the plovers and terns.
No, nobody ever said the shells. Hold on, I'm going to stop you right there. Nobody said the shells were a source of plover food.
Oh,
the shells and the smell and the dying things that are inside the shells may very well attract insects that may be fed on by the plovers, but nobody said that there was any shellfish being fed on by plovers. Just
okay, my mistake. And a member said that the next point. Actually, the plovers search for soft sand to build their nest and lay their eggs in the spring. The same program director said they do not like to build their nest on shells. They're too sharp. So by removing the shells, we're actually helping the plovers in their nesting process. We are good stewards of our New England beach. We respectfully request your approval of our amendment, and thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Doble. Questions from the commissioners? Anybody?
Well, I wasn't at the last meeting, but I did sign an affidavit listening to this. I've walked that beach all my life, and I think if any beach has an issue, it's probably Seagull Beach. I've never cut my foot on any of the shells that have been there. If anything, it's debris that's been left behind by people. I think just cleaning the beach itself, to have a clean beach, is detrimental to the ecology that we're trying to promote and the growth that we're trying to sustain there. That's just, it seems counterproductive for dune growth and natural accretion of the sand.
Well,
that's just mine.
Can I answer that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I spoke with the Audubon program director who has a PhD. She said the shells do not contribute to the retention of the sand on the beach. The beach vegetation, the seagrass and the sea rocket plants serve that function. And if you were to walk closer to the dunes, let's say 15, 20 feet from the dunes, barefoot, you will see what I'm talking about is sharp shells which cut their feet. After last meeting, the next day my wife was on the beach. She cut her foot on a shell. She wouldn't allow me to take a picture of her foot though. Right by the water where everyone walks, I agree with you. But up where you sit on the sand, there are shells that are very, very sharp, and it'll cut adults' feet, especially soft kids' feet.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, anything else?
Well, I have walked that beach at all different tides, high tide, storm tides, all different tides. So, you know, and it isn't only low tide in the morning. The tides change like an hour every day. So I don't know. I just, I've never cut my foot there, and I'm always walking barefoot, even in the middle of the winter.
But you're, I don't want to be controversial, but
Okay, so hold on, folks. We are not going to argue who cuts their feet and who doesn't cut their feet. Okay, the question is whether or not this has something to do with the Conservation Commission's purview as it relates to the Wetland Protection Act.
I stand corrected, Chairman. I'm sorry.
And I'm not saying I'm just saying like what I'm not going to let the discussion keep going any further. Commissioner Lawrence has stated her opinion. Mr. Doble has stated his opinion. And let's move on from there. Ellie, do you have anything else that you'd like to comment?
No, I don't. No.
Okay, Paul.
Yeah, the gentleman spoke with the Audubon person. My basic question is, and I don't want to continue this, but why are the shells there? Why are the shells where they are?
the shells on about every 5 or 10 years, we have the 5 or 10 year storm. And the waves come right up to the dunes. And actually 5 years ago, it took out about 5 feet of the dunes. And those 5 to 10 year storm brings everything from the ocean and deposits it against the dunes. And as the water is receding, it leaves those shells. And that's once every 5 to 10 years.
So just last comment, so it's a natural occurrence.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's drift deposit. Anybody else in the commission?
David.
David, go ahead.
I, like Ellie, walk there often. I walk there today, in fact. And I took some pictures. This picture on the left is picture I took. I'm a little concerned about the idea that there are a lot of shells. I don't consider what's there a lot of shells this year. Now, I don't know about past years. Now, I'm wondering if there's a way we could put some kind of sentence into our agreement that they, when they feel they need to remove shells because of an abundance of shell or that 100-year storm or that 10-year storm, that they can do so with Kelly's permission. Is that something we can do?
Yeah, I mean, you can add, yes, you can add, the short answer is yes, you can add anything to the any potential order that you would like in terms of special conditions, as long as you can convince the majority of the commissioners to do so. So yes, you can.
Okay.
May I make an observation? Our neighbor beach next door, the town beach, rakes with a machine and a tractor 4 times the size of what we're proposing, and they rake the shells weekly.
But if you go to the end of that beach by the jetty, it is totally full of shells and seaweed.
Right, they don't come down there. They rake
Right.
where people sit.
But we're also talking about a public beach, which has a little bit different management strategies involved. So there's a difference between a private beach and a public beach.
I would propose that there's that when they feel there is an abundance of shells, that they need to ask Kelly for permission, or even come back to us if that's what the rest of the commissioners feel.
But we would also have to put a limitation on the, not the eliminate, set area of the abundance of shells, because to one person, it could be an awful lot. To another person, it could only be maybe a dozen in a three square foot area. So we would have to have some sort of qualification in that.
Is that a problem for you, Ellie?
Yes.
What, the qualification?
Yeah.
You know, everybody has a different opinion. They can say it has a ton of shells there, but
Okay.
me, it's a natural occurrence. You know, just putting in my 2 cents worth.
Yeah,
Do you think
it's
we
a slippery
could-
slope. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman. Tom Durkin.
Oh, Tom. Okay, go ahead, Tom.
Excuse me, Ellie, do you think we could rely on Kelly's judgment in regard to that? I definitely see your point.
Oh, I trust Kelly's judgment on anything that she would have to oversee. She
And that
certainly
would
is
be
very
included-
knowledgeable.
I'm sorry, and that would be included in David's solution.
Hmm.
Good, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
without question, I consider that a natural occurrence. This is without a doubt a dynamic environment there that's changing virtually every day. So what's a lot of shells to one person is certainly different to another. And I would consider we would be going on a very slippery slope if we started allowing decisions made on what one person's opinion is on a lot, just to remove shells for a short period of time, because as I say, it changes daily.
So you'd rather not see this, or you'd rather see it come back to the commission if the choice had to be, if a decision had to be made?
I would rather not. I would rather see it left as it is.
Okay. All right. Anybody else?
I would have to agree with Commissioner Bishop.
I would agree as well. But I'm looking for anybody else who would make a comment one way or the other as to whether or not we should include this.
I certainly, go ahead, Paul.
Paul, go ahead.
I just think they should be left.
So you're saying no special condition?
Correct.
Okay. David?
I was just going to say, part of this is the process of listening to other people, and I certainly understand where the four of you are coming from, so I'll just withdraw that.
Okay, that makes it easy, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to learn here and at the one time and trying to hear what people's opinions are.
That's good.
So.
That's good. All right. Is there any other comments or questions from the commission? Beyond this last point that we've been talking about, the shells. Any other questions? If not, let me go to the audience. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to make a comment on this? And if you do, please raise your hand electronically so we can see you.
I don't see anyone.
I'm not seeing anybody. Okay, last chance amongst the audience. All right, last I'll come back. Kelly, any comments or questions from you?
I don't think I really have anything to add to that. I guess the only thing would be reiterate that the public beach is managed as a public beach. It's very heavily used. We do require that some areas of that are left natural. We do have a caveat in the management plan that if there is an overabundance of seaweed that accumulates down at the jetty end and it constitutes a health risk as designated by the director of the health department and myself, then they do have an allowance for doing some raking of that seaweed under an emergency situation. So that's the only suggestion I could make, is if that that type of situation arose, but that I think that is a long way off from where we're at with the desire to rake the shells as they are at the moment. So,
And that would be independent. If it's an emergency level, that would be independent of the order anyhow, so.
yeah, I mean, I guess that could be treated as an emergency.
Right.
Order. I have nothing further to add.
Okay, anything further amongst the commission? If not, would somebody like to make a motion?
Well, as we always do, we make the motion in a positive.
That's right.
So I would like to make a motion that we approve the request to amend their raking request, with the comments that we received from NHESP. I don't know what else to say.
No, just you're keeping the original order of conditions plus the comments from Natural Heritage.
That's correct.
Okay, that's all right. All right, I thank you, Ellie. Is there a second? Somebody needs to say second.
Second, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Kelly, would you call the roll, please?
Bishop? Oh,
Nay.
sorry, was there a question from Pat?
Hold on, somebody. Pat, did you have a question?
No, I'm just trying to get connected.
Bishop?
Nay.
Durkin?
Nay.
Bernstein?
Nay.
Lawrence?
Nay.
Hoops?
Nay.
Huggins?
Hey,
Mulhern?
Nay.
So the motion does not carry. 0 to 7 against.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Mr. Doble.
Thank you.
All right, next order of business is a notice of intent for 114 Upper County LLC, 160 Wood Road, Yarmouth, Mass. Proposed and after the fact construction of a retaining wall, stairs and deck and tree work within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetative wetland.
I'm just going to unmute Craig Whitten and I think Darren Meyer. Oops, sorry.
Hello?
Oh,
Hi, can you hear me?
we got Darren, and are we still working on Craig, or is he not here?
I'm here.
Oh, Craig is here too. Okay, we
Yeah,
see.
I'm gonna present. I'll present.
Okay, Darren, you want to go ahead with the presentation then?
Yes, yes. Actually here just representing Craig and 114 Upper County LLC, the owner of the property. 160 Wood Road in South Yarmouth. The property supports a single family dwelling that abuts a bordering vegetated wetland on James Pond. The project involves 4 objectives here. First is to permit an already built retaining wall on the east side of the property. Second would be replace the existing deck, which is a 10 by 43 deck with a 12 by 43 deck. That deck construction actually is about 8 feet above existing grade. Existing sonotubes will remain. The deck will be extended 2 feet with a cantilever, so really no impact as far as that goes. Next would be to construct an additional retaining wall and stairs on the west side of the dwelling. And then fourthly would be there's 2 or 3 diseased trees within the wetland area that Craig was hoping to remove. One of them is in danger of potentially dropping onto the neighbor's deck. They wanted to remove that threat. So those are the 4 items involved. If you need me to get into construction and all that, I'm happy to do that. We've proposed a hay bale, straw bales as close to the dwelling as possible, but still allowing a little bit of area to work. Any of the heavy machinery or equipment would stay up on the upper level of the property, nothing down on the lower level rear of the house to try to mitigate any significant disturbance. Basically, I'm happy to answer any questions at that point, whether from me or Craig.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, questions?
This has already occurred, correct?
The existing deck has been removed and the retaining wall on the east side of the dwelling has been constructed. The new deck is proposed. The wall and stairway to the west side is proposed. And then the select, tree work would be proposed, as nothing's been done on that end.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ellie. Anybody else in the commission? All right, Kelly, any questions?
I just have a couple of comments. The image on the screen, I just did a side by side with the proposed plan, and then the one on the right is from our town GIS, and that was just to give you an indication of the prior the grading of the lot. And the green area that's shaded was what was considered to be the landscaped area of the property. I did note, and I'll just forward in the slides. You can see in the aerial image that the area was quite well vegetated out behind the house. So it looks like there has been some clearing back in this area here, where it looks like some trees have been removed and some emergent herbaceous species and some invasives have come up through the growing season. This is standing on the kind of driveway side of the house area, just looking back towards the back property line. So you can kind of see the comparison that there did seem to be some heavier vegetation in that area, which includes the 35-foot no disturb to the BVW. So it may be appropriate to add back some plantings to that area. Maybe what's there might be, some of it may be able to be retained and it may be now supplemented, but I think it would be worth delineating more permanently where that 35-foot no disturb zone is, so that it doesn't become a lawn the entire extent of this area out to the back fence. Other than that, I don't see any issues with impacts from the retaining walls and the deck themselves. The contractor did come to me before removing the deck to get a sign off to rebuild that deck in the same footprint, just so that I was aware that it was pre-existing, because they were doing some remodeling of the house. So I had signed off on a deck reconstruction per the original plan, but that's after that was when some more extensive work was done on the property. So that's when it became a violation. And then just a final comment is that we haven't received the Mass DEP file number for this project. So I would recommend that we wait to receive that number and their comments, and perhaps get a planting plan for that no disturb zone, so that that we can have that shown on a plan before the permit is issued. That's all I have.
Ed, Tom Durkin.
Sorry, Tom, I was unmuted. Go ahead, Tom.
Fine, thank you very much. In view of the photograph to the left of the altered landscape and apparent removal of trees, I would propose, as Kelly has indicated, that an arborist make a decision as to the diseased trees and the advisability of cutting them down. There may possibly be some indiscriminate cutting that has gone on in the past. The arborist would eliminate that. Thank you.
Okay, Tom, are you looking for like a certified arborist, or are you just talking about like an arborist, a real tree person, or are you talking about a horticulturalist?
I'm talking about an arborist. I don't know the difference.
No, well, the arborist just speaks to the trees. The horticulturalist does, does a variety of different things, but.
Yeah, my concern is the trees.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, yes.
Sorry, just to note on that, I didn't see when I was out there the trees that were proposed for removal. I didn't see those marked, so I wasn't 100% clear on the extent or what trees that were. I may have missed it, but I didn't. I could only see the flags for the wetland delineation. I couldn't see any flagged trees.
Well, there also is not the 35-foot line off of the area, which on the proposed plot. So I'd like to see that added onto it too.
Can everyone hear me, or do I have to raise my hand?
Craig, go ahead.
Yeah, if I could just make one comment. Please note that on the side of the house, there was a rotten shed that was pretty much falling. If you look at the top picture, you'll see some bark mulch in that area. There was actually, the first thing we had to do when we bought the house, we had to remove this rotten shed that was pretty much falling down and housing a family of skunks. So that went away. As far as the tree comment, we did not cut any trees in that green area way in the back. There were a few trees that were near that shed that were basically leaning and falling down on the shed. I don't know if anyone saw this property prior. It was quite a mess. There were no trees in that green area, and you're welcome to visit and see that there's no stumps. We actually, what we did was, I can't stand trash, and proceeded to remove 4 dump trucks of trash out of the wetland areas that were verging into where the ducks were sitting and including a Stop and Shop golf cart, which was pretty funny. I don't know how it got there, but it ended up landing in the woods. Wood, broken, wood with nails through it. I can't go into it. It was about 4 dump trucks of trash. So if it looks open and whatnot, it's only because all it was basically bullbriar and a whole bunch of junk and vines filled with trash. So what you see there is a million times better conservation wise, in my opinion, versus what it was. But no trees were removed. This was simply high brush filled with trash that I basically had to not, clean it up a little bit to get to the trash, But it looks a lot better, but there were no trees that we would potentially need to replace. And I am a landscaper, so we were planning on revegetating and putting in, many kinds of viburnum and rhodies and things like that to really make it look a lot nicer when it was all done. So that's my only comment.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else in the amongst the commission who would like to make a comment? All right, anything else from you, Kelly?
No, I have nothing further. I just, my earlier comments were based on the aerial photos, which show fairly dense vegetation there. So it's hard to compare those two. And then I think part of the comment about the trees was the ones that are proposed for removal, that they're not flagged on site. So it would be useful to have those flagged on site and actually have somebody certify that they are diseased and need to be removed.
Okay, so, and we are looking, just to make everybody aware, we are looking for an arborist, a certified arborist to do that, to make that designation. We're going to move over to the public. If there's anybody in the audience who has any comments or questions about this project, please raise your hand electronically. Still seeing nobody. Last chance among the audience. All right, if not, I'm going to come back to the commission. Unless there's any further discussion among the commission, would somebody like to make a motion?
Are we delaying?
I'm sorry, that's right. Yeah, we have to. Well, we'll have to continue to September 3rd. Is it, Kelly?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, to September 3rd for the DEP file number, as well as to get the planting plan and the report from the arborist. And I'm missing one that was, we were delineating what we were doing.
35-foot line.
Yeah,
Thank you.
35-foot line.
All right, thank you. Did I get everything there?
You did.
All right, so would somebody like to make a motion to that effect?
So moved, David.
Thank you, David. A second.
Second, Ellie.
Thank you, Ellie. Kelly, would you call the roll, please?
Bishop,
Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Hoops,
Aye.
Huggins,
Aye.
Mulhern.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously to continue to September 3rd, add a 35-foot line to the plan and a plan for buffer plantings in the 35-foot no disturb zone and an arborist report for the trees to be removed.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Darren. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, next order of business is another notice of intent. Also continued from, continued from July 16th, 2020 for SE 83-2240, John Muscatel, 44 Grandview Drive, Yarmouth, Massachusetts, proposed changes to an existing pier and float facility on Bass River. And
We have a request to continue to the September 3rd meeting. They're still working on an updated plan.
okay, all right. Would somebody like to make a motion to that effect?
So moved, Tom Durkin.
Thank you, Tom. A second.
Second, Ellie Lawrence.
Thank you, Ellie. Kelly, would you call the roll, please?
Bishop,
Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Hoops,
Aye.
Higgins,
Aye.
Mulhern.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously to continue to September 3rd.
All right, thank you. Next order of business is another continued notice of intent from August 6, 2020. It's for SE 83-2243, Douglas Richards, 63 Park Avenue, Yarmouth, Massachusetts. Proposed addition to a single-family dwelling within the buffer zone to a salt marsh, BVW, and coastal bank. And I think this is Dan, right?
Yes, he has his hand raised. You should be able to unmute yourself, Dan.
Sure. And as I recall, we're all set with this one. It was just a SC number only continuance. So if I answer any questions, but I think we basically closed it out at just waiting for that SC number so you could issue the order.
Yeah, my records show there was a vote to issue the variance and have me write the conditions for the order and then just continue to this meeting to receive the file number, which we have now received.
Okay, so we're all good then, right?
Yeah.
You faded out there in the last minute.
Yes, we're all set.
Okay, so we just need a, oh, actually, we're all set then, right? We
just, I guess we.
Did we take the vote?
I think we made a motion to issue the variant, but we didn't make the motion to actually issue the order. So because we're waiting.
Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to that effect then?
So moved, David.
Thank you, David. Is there a second?
Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Kelly, would you call the roll, please?
Bishop,
Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence. Oh,
Aye.
are you
I listened to that particular one, so I feel confident in voting for it.
okay? Hoops,
Aye.
Higgins,
Aye.
Mulhern.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Next order of business is a continued hearing from August 6, 2020 for SE 83-2237, Pusher and Perrin Misra, 75 Partridge Valley Road, Yarmouth, Massachusetts, proposed seasonal dock on Javanet's Pond. And I think I saw Mark in the audience, is that right?
I've allowed him to speak now.
Mark, you there?
Nope.
Hold on.
Yep, we can hear you now.
Oh, you can hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. For the record, this is Mark Burgess again for the Misra's project at 75 Partridge Valley Road. So we took a little time and looked into what options we could do to minimize this project further. So a revised plan was submitted. The changes that were made was the dock was narrowed from 4 feet to 3 feet, and the dock was shortened on the landward side by 5 feet, and I'm sorry, it was shortened landward from the pond. So it extends 5 feet less into the pond, and the inshore ramp was removed and replaced with just 2 steps. So this shortens the landward by 5 feet as well. So the entire structure goes from 40 feet to 30. Let's see. And I went out and changed the stakes on the site if anybody went back out or not. I will note the water level in the pond has dropped about 7 inches since the last time we've been out, since the last time we were in front of the board. Obviously, this is common for the month of August. We haven't had basically any rain. And so if it's dry for 1 month, that is not an average low, as the regulations suggest that the water level is determined by the average water level, not an instantaneous level taken at this time of year. Let's see. And oh, just as a point of note, I went over to the stone weir that's at the other end of the pond, and of course that area is completely dry. But what I also noticed was the area where it goes in under the road is plugged. You can't even see where the water would get out of the pond and down in underneath that culvert to get under the road. So just as a point, you know, I know it's not your issue, but DPW should probably look into that because it's plugged solid with dirt. Okay, so then in addition to the revised plan, I looked into the variance very carefully. You see a variance request in case one is needed for this. And you see in the variance request why it's possible that a variance might not be needed. Now, as you guys know, I'm not trying to do this to be cute. I looked at the bylaw very carefully. I looked at the way it was written, and understanding that, you know, you make a bylaw, you make a setback, it's meant for normal conditions under the average conditions, if you will. And of course, sites generate some specifics from time to time. This is one of those. So I looked at the principle that if you extended the property lines, well, we've run into this before. When you get into these circular waterways, everybody owns a pie piece. So at some point, you never make the 25-foot setback. So it doesn't seem logical to use the property line extensions because from the deed, you know, they own to a certain point, period. After that, it's either public or Commonwealth land, you know. So then if you look at the shape of the lot and I offset the property lines, all of the structure is a pondward of those offsets. So what do you do? How do you interpret it? If you want to continue to interpret it as if the dock extended up the middle of the lot, then a variance is needed on the north side because we are 25 feet from that line on the south side. So if you choose to interpret it that way, then we would still need a variance against the northern property line. And in the variance, I described where the 25-foot may be considered excessive. I know that I was around when we were researching some of these bylaw revisions, but as I pointed out in the variance request, you know, DEP makes a allowance of 15 foot for freshwater docks, and unfortunately, Yarmouth kept the same 25. So there's a number of reasons in the variance that I feel a variance could be granted for this, and that's really the shortness of it. So I'll open it to questions.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Commissioners, any questions for Mark? Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, Mark, you've talked extensively, obviously, with the gentleman to the south there. Is he satisfied with the adjustments that you've been able to make?
I believe not.
To
In
the
fact-
south now?
Yes, the gentleman to the south is the one that's been commenting.
Right. He now has 25.3, as you indicate. He is still unsatisfied with that?
I believe so. He submitted another letter reiterating his points. If you recall, he submitted a letter asking the board to not even allow the continuance for us to look into the project further. He wanted it stopped from the very beginning without giving us a chance to even look into it further.
Just to be informal, I assumed you had a rapport with the gentleman after our last discussion last term.
No, we have not spoken since the last hearing.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Yep.
Okay, you all set, Tom?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else amongst the commission?
Yeah, Rick,
Rick?
either Ed or Kelly, if you could refresh my memory. I think the regulations call for these aluminum docks to be removed seasonally. Can you just refresh my memory? Is it May through October? I was trying to recall the period that.
I think it's April 1st, October 1st, isn't it?
Oh,
if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
It's either April or May.
So this structure will be removed for the majority of the year.
November 1st until April 1st.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else on the board?
Is this is the plan that we tweaked the dock a little more facing to the north, correct?
No, the center line of the dock didn't move. It was already 25 feet from the property line to the south. It just wasn't 25 feet from the property line to the north.
Yeah,
so it stayed exactly where it was. It just got shortened 5 feet on each end.
And narrower as well.
And narrower as well, correct.
Yeah, but I thought we were going to angle it a little, like a 15-degree angle upwards from what we see on the map here, to sort of angle it off that property to the south.
If the commission's favorable to that, I have no problem with it. It would only reduce the view by probably a de minimis amount, but I have no problem doing it that way.
It's just a consideration for the person to the south.
I understand.
You hit that 25-foot there, and you haven't heard anything from the person to the north. So, that's just a thought.
Yeah, we had looked into. I'm sorry, we had looked into moving the whole thing, and that was frowned upon. So, because then we're even closer to the other lot. So since we meet the setback on one side, we chose to leave it where it was. Also, it's on the side of that access path that's down there now. So if we move it to the north at all, then it becomes like in the middle of that access. So it seemed logical to sort of leave it where it is. But I do have no problem if you want me to start it in the same place and angle it a couple of feet to the north clockwise. I have no problem with that.
Just a thought, just throwing something out there.
Yeah. Yep.
Paul?
Yeah, there's a note here about the request for variance 25 feet from the property line is based on a technicality that they're starting the dock just seaward of the property boundary. Now, could you explain that a little bit more to me? If
Yeah.
it's a technicality, what's going on here?
Well, so I would say in a normal circumstance, docks start much further upland, and they extend landward of the ends of the property line. So when you offset your property line, it will run in to some place, runs in 25 feet one way, 25 feet in the other. And if the dock was intersected that line at all, that wouldn't be good. So we ran into this on a project on Dina's Pond where we were just able, like probably within 6 inches on either side, we put the dock in the middle, and a 25-foot property line offset based on the lines where they're drawn on the record plan didn't touch the dock. So that, I'm sure that's the intent of the bylaw and the freshwater regulations. In this case, if you look at the two lines on the plan, did you guys get a color? I think you got a black and white plan. So there are two heavy lines that form an X just to the south of the existing work limit and the path, around 40 feet out on the section line. So those are the 25-foot offsets. If I take the property lines as they're drawn to the record of where they end, and I offset them 25 feet, the dock starts to the pondward side of those lines. So the interpretation is, if it doesn't intersect with those property lines, are we within 25 feet? The bylaw doesn't say that it's a 25-foot of a radius of the property lines. We've always just offset these sideways. So it's a very unique circumstance. I am certain that the bylaw is intended to be 25 feet, from a horizontal offset on either side. If we do that and apply it that way here, the dock isn't within those setbacks.
And could Kelly comment on that? And also, final question, I think I've asked this last time. Are there other docks like this on this little pond?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. And Kelly, could you comment on those?
Sure. So just, I guess, in my simple words, I think he was saying that you didn't need a variance from the side setback regulation because they were proposing to start the dock seaward of the property line. So therefore it doesn't cross that property line. Therefore it doesn't need to be 25 feet from the neighboring lots. But from my point of view, the intent of the regulations is fairly clear that it is 25 feet from either property line in that straight line from the dock onto the property. And then the other grounds for for actually issuing the variance was that the lot shape is unique, is a burden because of the pie shape. But I'm less inclined with that argument because the pie shape is very common for a pond. So it's not really a unique situation. The pie-shaped lots are on many, many properties, and I think it's more a question of whether the lot line is long enough to accommodate a dock at the edge of the water body. The consideration of whether the 25-foot setback as a regulation is arduous because it was originally written for coastal docks but was extended to freshwater docks as well. Perhaps that argument holds more weight with me, that these pondside properties probably do have a smaller property line in many cases, and these docks are less significant in their size. Usually they're a seasonal structure, so therefore maybe we should, in line with the DEP's guidelines for a 15-foot setback, maybe we should be revisiting that required distance to a property line through a review of the regulations. But again, you would still in this instance need to grant a variance to that regulation in this instance if you chose to do so.
Okay, Rick?
I know this is, I'm just missing something here, but Mr. Burgess said that they were starting the dock outside of the limitation of the property line. Seems to me by definition, if they're outside of the property line, there's some questions of whether or not they can do this. Am I totally missing this?
Yeah, I thought about that too, whether it's no longer on project on their property. So how does that impact their right to do it? Don't quite know the answer to that. I think it's the pond ownership, I think in these instances is divided up amongst the property owners around it. I think that is the correct understanding. So maybe that would still give them the right to build a structure, even if it doesn't begin on their property.
But they do, I mean, the pond, Because they own the pie shape,
Of the
one
pond.
would assume that the pie shape continues out into the pond. And whether or not it's, I mean, does it say something about that in any of the deeds? Because oftentimes in saltwater, they specifically say, you know, it extends.
Past to the
it
low water
extends.
mark.
Right.
Yeah.
But the applicant is showing the property line here. He's actually illustrating that the property owner's property ends at that point. So I'm just kind of scratching my head on this, you know?
Yeah,
What gives-
Dan Ojala and I had some conversations about this, but if it was a great pond, then I believe that the property line, or the beyond the property becomes waters of the Commonwealth, and that's why you need a license.
Yes.
In a pond that's not a great pond, we weren't entirely certain whether people actually own the property to the pie in the middle, you know.
Yes.
I don't think any of the deeds say that. So, but it's not, it wouldn't necessarily be Commonwealth property. I don't think it's town property. So it's possible to assume that in this particular instance, for embayments like this that aren't great ponds, that people may have an interest in the land beyond their property to the where the property lines would meet, you know, everybody owning their pie piece to the middle.
But if that were the case, then you would also say, then it's like, well, if you're allowing people to, then people would be saying, oh, well, you can't swim in front of my property.
Yeah, that would be very interesting.
And that also brings up the subject in one of the pictures is there's a float that's anchored in the middle of the pond. Who owns that?
Yeah.
Oh, Dan Ojala from Down Cape. It's a very interesting subject. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Sure. So basically, the way I understand it, there's a statute that's basically called the derelict fee statute. It's chapter 18358. And it basically says that even if your deed doesn't call out the fact, any property that's bounded by a way or by a water body, you get all the rights that the person that conveyed it to you would give you. And while the Commonwealth does hold the fee in great ponds in a trust for the fee in that for the all the inhabitants, in these smaller ponds like Javanets, it's actually divided up like Mark was discussing, in a pie-shaped, oftentimes if it's a round pond, pie-shaped little pieces that every single person around the outside would own that fee in. You know, it's not usual though to show lot lines out in that manner. It's quite confusing and can of course lead to litigation, because someone would say, well, the pie should be shaped this way or that way, depending on the water level and the time of year. And it's a very complex, you know, there's a lot of cases on it. But basically here, the deed calls for some pipes by the shore. Would actually, I remember many years ago, back in '85, done a survey for this and found the pipes, and the old elevation of the water was 11. That would be 12 these days. That's just a plus or minus a foot from the quad map. But you know, so the deed runs from the pipe to the pipe, you know, along the water. But again, there's that chapter 18358 covers it. It says even if the deed doesn't describe it, you own it. And unless it's very specifically excluded by the grantor, and there's very strict rules on that language, and then, you know, it would be a mess if somebody ever thought to exclude it. But so we own it. We would have a right to have a little, you know, with your jurisdiction, you know, put this in there. And I too was swayed by Mark's argument on the DEP with the 15-foot side yards for freshwater ponds. We're not pulling a 40-foot boat up to this. It's just for canoes, kayaks, just, you know, so you don't get your feet in the muck as you get out a little bit deeper. So I would think that the board, you know, with an eye towards that, could find it in themselves to give a variance, and would be on pretty firm ground where we probably arguably make it on the south side, and we're quite close on the north side. And to deny it would be to basically say this, this family can't have a little dock here when all the neighbors seem to have them. Seems a little unfair to me, and I think that you could find your way to that variance. granting. But that's my 2 cents on that. But again, the 183.58 covers the ownership in these small ponds, and everybody does own out to the middle. I don't think a court would uphold you keeping people from swimming in front of your property, though. That would be my guess.
Yeah, just so you know, I wasn't looking to change case law or something like that either, folks. I was just raising the point.
Yeah, it's just very unusual to show those lines because it just leads to all kinds of confusion and arguments, and no one wants to buy a lawsuit. It's just basically common type property, but if push comes to shove, they would own the fee out in a pie shape.
But we said nobody else has any docks on this pond at this point, right?
No, that's not. Oh, I don't think that. I'm looking at Google Earth. There's other things out there. There's a float. Isn't there, Mark, a little pier just to our
I thought there
north?
was a float, but
I'd have to check. My memory doesn't. I don't know on my memory whether there's any formal docks there or not. There. The next question that might be obvious. If you run a ruler on the plan, on the property lines that the Misras have, the dock is within those. It's within that pie shape. It doesn't go out of the pie shape. That question's probably brewing somewhere. So it's fine that way. I can pull up Google Earth and take a look and see. But yeah. I mean, the waterfront owners around the lot have various entities that they've put in. There's beaches. There's some retaining walls. There's various things that are there. I just don't remember a formal dock or a permit for one.
Yeah,
okay,
80
so
feet, 80 feet to our north, there's something that looks an awful lot like one, but and I believe there was. Well, I would just leave it at that. I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but yeah.
That's fine. I mean, again, if that's the case, then I mean, I see that it does fit narrowly in the boundary, in that southern boundary, but that would also then argue, I think, with Ellie's point of moving the end of the dock north. Is there a reason why you just don't do that to give maximum space between both lot lines?
Like I said, we're happy to do that. If we put it, we're already favoring the south abutter with the 25 feet. So if we move it, if we physically move the whole thing to the north, nobody's adverse to that. But we didn't want to reduce the nonconformity on that side. But again, we can rotate it, and that doesn't.
That's all I'm saying. We're just saying rotate the end north. We're not saying rotate or not move the whole dock.
Yeah.
Just rotate the water end of it.
Okay.
I think that's what you were saying, right, Ellie?
Yeah, that's correct. It's just rotating the end of it up a little farther to the north so that it's not encroaching upon that lot line as it comes in, because that seems to be the issue that they're having with the abutters.
Yep.
I think that would seem to certainly help alleviate some of the concern, I think. And then I think the other thing, I'll just say this, and then I'm not going to say anything more about it. But given that this is a seasonal dock, it's going to be in and out of the water seasonally. It's a freshwater dock. It's not. This is aluminum with aluminum grating, right, Mark?
Yes.
So it's going to be easily stored and removed. It's sitting on mushroom pads.
Yeah, the little aluminum feet.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, I get we have that. We carried that 25-foot setback from the saltwater piers, but again, I think the reality of it is that it's a seasonal pier. It's not, it's just a smaller scale. So I don't have a real big issue with that in terms of the lot line or the side setback. And my only other point would be to say that we could also condition it so that they don't tie anything permanently to the pier, that they use it for access and access only, and then they can, if they have kayaks or canoes or whatever, I don't have a problem with them storing it on the decking. I'd rather not see they tie it up. That's all.
Yeah,
I don't.
I don't see any problem with that at all. I offset the lines a little bit more. So if we rotated the dock only 2 feet, then it becomes parallel to the property line to the north. And certainly there's no problem in rotating it, 5 feet puts it, about 5 feet puts it, well, yeah. Anyway, if we moved the center line of the end of the dock 5 feet to the north, that still kind of lines up with everything. So there's no problem with doing that at all. I'd be happy to change the plan accordingly.
If I may add, I just, with all this talk about the ponds being pie shaped and putting these docks in, if one person has it, then the next person has it, then the next, and they're all going to be bristling out into a small little pie shape into the center that really will, I don't know, it'll encroach upon the whole thing if everybody puts in a dock that's allowed with the pie shape. I'm just looking down the road and visualizing what it's going to look like. It's just, I don't think it's very inducive to what we're trying to control on the waterfront. I think it's going to be very detrimental if we go down this slippery slope. I'm just putting that out to the members on the commission.
Well, and that certainly was an issue that when we were putting the freshwater regs together, that was one of the considerations. That was a serious consideration. We didn't want to design something that was going to automatically be given variances for every time somebody came in and asked for a variance, they got it. Because we didn't want exactly what you were saying, Ellie, that we didn't want to get this creep of docks and structures, especially in the smaller ponds and that sort of thing. So it is a real consideration.
Ed, this is David.
Yeah.
I have a question for Mark. Mark, how far is it from the end of that dock to what you would call the middle of the pond?
I'm measuring that now.
About 300 feet.
Yeah, I get pretty close to that.
Okay. And how deep is it? I know it's going to vary. As you just said, you lost 7 inches. But at the very deepest part of the winter, summer, whatever season, how deep is it at the end of the pond? Do you have any idea? I mean, at the end of the dock. Do you have any idea?
Well, when we did the survey, we had over 2 feet, and I had 2 feet and 1 inch at the last hearing in July. It's only been just recently that the pond dropped, and we haven't had any rain.
Okay.
And I don't know if this matters, but the abutter to the south stated that the pond is somewhere between 8 and 12 feet deep out in the middle, if that matters.
Okay. I just also, I brought this up last time, worried about what Ellie just brought up, and that is sooner or later, that's why I asked about how far it is to the center. Sooner or later, you're gonna have all these people around and very little center area to do anything. But that's my one worry about this.
I think that's why the bylaws were developed, to specifically limit the docks to 30 feet so that they wouldn't protrude too far out into the water.
Right. So 300 feet. 300 feet helps me. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. And one dimension across this pond is 800 feet the long way. So it's a good sized pond. You're just going to have tiny little things sticking out from the edges. It'll be nowhere near the middle. The swim float is out a ways, but obviously you can navigate around that. That's the abutters anyway.
Yeah, if people were swimming, they wouldn't be swimming this close to shore because it's too shallow.
Okay. Paul?
Yeah, I just one or two questions. So is there any ecological reason why these docks shouldn't exist on a small pond like that?
In my opinion, I think they help protect the near shore vegetation that exists on a lot of these ponds. So you're getting like an elevated walkway over a salt marsh, you're finding a way to get up and over this vegetation without walking through it. So I think they do serve to protect and enhance that particular vegetative resource.
Okay. And there's a float out on the pond. Does that require a permit?
I think it would require a mooring permit. It's not conservation jurisdiction, but a Section 10 mooring permit from the harbor master. And I don't know if it has one. I have no idea.
I believe that they do not allow permits for moorings in the ponds, whether they're great ponds or little ponds.
Really? You can't get a mooring in like Long Pond?
Nope, you can't. If it's in there, it has to come out or it's illegal.
I did not know that.
And finally, are the aesthetics of this the responsibility of this committee for any reason related to conservation?
No.
No, we don't have an aesthetics, anything aesthetics in our bylaw or any, and in the state law.
Okay, thank you.
All right, commissioners, any further discussion amongst the commission? Kelly, did I get to you? I don't think I've gotten to you yet.
I had a chance to say a couple of things. I did want to bring to your attention the correspondence received from the abutter today, Mr. Rosales, who had some concerns with the process that we followed with regards to accepting the revised plans. He thought that the revisions to the plans were significant enough that a new notice of intent should be filed or that he should have been notified. I would, I guess, disagree with that there was a modification to the proposed plan. I didn't see it as being significant enough to require any kind of new filing or anything. The intent of the project is still the same. It was an accommodation to improve the circumstances for the abutter. And I don't know that we have any obligation in the regulations to contact abutters specifically if there is an updated plan. I think the revised plans and all the updated documents were added automatically to the file and to the electronic file and were available for anyone who wished to find them there or to contact me for a copy.
And he was aware that the hearing had been continued for such a reason, so.
Yeah, that's correct. And then just with regard to those comment made about the congestion with docks on the ponds, and we do have the regulation that they should be located a minimum of 75 feet from adjacent piers. And I did a quick measurement because there is another, whether permitted or unpermitted, there is another structure to the north on a couple of properties up, and a rough calculation showed it being greater than 75 feet from that. And I guess that's, another way that we aim to keep the congestion on these ponds to a minimum, as well as the short reduced size. But it does make it a kind of a first come, first served in terms of who gets to have a dock based on that regulation, particularly on these small ponds.
It's good. I completely forgot we had that stipulation as well. But I think a lot of times that's a first come, first serve, regardless of freshwater or saltwater. So
yeah, that's true. And then just the only other comment, I guess, was that we haven't heard anything from the property to the north with regard to the variance, but the property to the south, the proposed plan meets the 25-foot requirement from their property. So the grounds for being against that particular variance are perhaps not as substantial because they're not affected on their side of the dock by that granting of that variance.
Well, it seems to me that the next step is the concern about the water level and the difference between what we see in the winter and what we see in the summer. And maybe we should look into that at a little more, no pun intended, depth to see what the average height of that water is at the end of that dock, because it looks like, this time of year, we're going to be bottoming out, or they're going to be disturbing the bottom, and maybe in the winter they won't. But I think maybe we should look into a study of what the average water height level is.
Well, all we really care is from April 1st to October 31st for depth.
Right, because they're supposed to be out in the winter time. So I mean, you can go back and forth with this too. I mean, it's one of those things that, you know, I mean, the presence of a dock certainly allows the user to get further out into the pond than what they would if they were just launching from the shore. And, you know, all of the problems of potential impact at the shoreline are then, you know, transferred out further out into the pond where you have, you know, perhaps less emergent vegetation. You may still have issues in water depth, but you certainly aren't dragging canoes or something like that over the shoreline. So I guess that there's trade-offs in both ways on that. So again, that's not too helpful, but it's you know, one of those things that when you're trying to consider a dock, you know, that I guess that's one of the advantages to the dock is that it moves the impact further offshore and makes the shoreline less vulnerable. All right, any further discussion among the commission? All right, I'm going to go over to public comment. I would ask that this is a somewhat controversial topic, so I would ask that the comments be limited. I'm trying to keep things down to maybe 3 or 4 minutes at the very most. I will first, let me go to Mr. Rosales first. And I would ask again, Mr. Rosales, that you've provided several written letters as well as verbal comment. The verbal comment has pretty much mirrored the written comment. So I'd ask that you limit comments to new material, if you would please. But other than that, I will let you, I recognize your right to speak right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I submitted a written package early this morning. Have the members of the commission received my package dated August 19th?
I did. I got the package. I can check what I got it today, or you know, late. Well, I got it this afternoon when I checked my email, but I can check what time.
Did the rest of the members get a copy of it? I thank Ms. Grant for doing that. Thank you. Okay, so
it was sent to everybody.
If you could put the previous slide up, the one that showed the revised plan. Thank you. Now, I'm suggesting that he needs 2 variances, that he is closer to our line, we're the southern line. If the distance between on the shoreline is 45 feet, or according to Mr. Ogelay's 1985 plan, which I put in, that's what's in the applicant's deed. It says being the same plan, being the same lot shown on the plan of land in West Yarmouth that I've recreated in your packets as Exhibit A and B. One is a blow up. That shows at the maximum 45.25 feet, 45.25 feet. Now, if you look at this revised plan, the lot to the north, it shows 21.2 feet from the middle of the proposed new dock to that northern line, the other side neighbor's line. So if you subtract that from 45.25 feet minus 21.2 feet, you get 2405 feet, less than 24 feet to our line. I don't know how he gets 25.3 feet. If the lot line is only 45.25 feet wide, when you add up his measurements, 21.2
2 plus 25.3, that's 46.5 feet. It can't be that way. So if anything, the statements that I were hearing that I'm okay on my side of the property because I'm in compliance, I'm disagreeing with that because there's only 45.25 feet at the max, according by the gentleman that just spoke. I think he did the plan between the two iron pipes. And if you
Yeah.
take it farther down to the end, it's even thinner. So I think it's not just one variance, it's two variances where they have that plot. Secondly, the water depth. The water depth, he's moved it in. So I heard Mr. Burgess, who's a fine gentleman. I have no issue with Mr. Burgess, but he seemed to indicate that the previous measurement was over 2 feet. Well, that was 30 feet out, and that was in April. And now he's moved it in toward the shore, shortened it 5 feet. So it only goes out, I conceive, I guess, 25 feet. And at 25 feet, just the other day, looking at my exhibits C, D, and E, which I did it sort of not a fancy way. I took a measurement. I put a pen mark 24 inches up my leg. I drew a pen mark. You'll see that on exhibit C. I went out to the water to the post, and you can clearly see that the pen mark is way above the water level at that level. And then I took a picture of a close-up of the ruler in the water. It was 15.75 inches. If your regulation requires 2 feet at the average, and you define it, average seasonal low water. And that's defined. These are your regulations, members of the commission, no more than 3 years old. Your regulations, a minimum of 2 feet of water depth must be achieved at the terminal end of the pier at the average seasonal low water, which is defined as an arithmetic mean. It's defined, but what the applicant has failed to do is to use that particular measurement. Instead, he uses the OHW, which I guess is ordinary high water, which I can't find defined at all in your regulations, and it's inapplicable. It just isn't inapplicable. So at best, you need 3 variances, 1 for each lot line and 1 for the water depth to get through with this revised plan. I'll reserve my comment as to whether or not, my objection as to whether or not this should have been a new filing or not, because we seem to be beyond that point. But if I didn't, by happenstance, look at the plan or look at the website, I would never have found this revised plan, and I would not have been able to deal with this. But I don't know how he gets his measurements. I don't know how you can create more width than is actually there. But at 21.2 feet to the north, at 45.25 feet wide, it leaves less than 25 feet to my property. It's also supposed to be perpendicular to the lot line, to the shoreline, and as has been pointed out by Ms. Lawrence, I believe, there was discussion to move that. It wasn't perpendicular, it was angled toward our piece of property. And it's very close, and it's the way it is. So I don't create these regulations. The board did, you guys did. And Mr. Burgess obviously got into a discussion about depth and width and length at the time this was done in December of 2016, because I went to the minutes and I quoted the minutes. I've attached the minutes, and your harbor master expressed his support for a maximum 30-foot length and a 2-foot minimum depth, 2-foot minimum depth. And the commission unanimously agreed. Hasn't even been in existence for 3 years. So I'm sorry about that. I didn't write them. They're yours.
Okay, Mr. Rosales,
This isn't in compliance.
thank you for your comments. Let's let Mark, if you would, can you briefly answer those points?
Yes. the last comment about the dock being perpendicular. If you take a triangle, which I just did, along the tie line, the dock is probably 1 foot out of being perpendicular. And we talked about rotating it clockwise up to 5 feet, which again, we have no problem with. But in actuality, perpendicular to the tie line, the dock is nearly perpendicular to that line. Now, the tie line, as Dan can verify, the tie line on the record plan goes from the iron pipe on the north side to what was a pipe on the south side that he found, many years ago. That is the record location of the property line and the end of the property line. So that's where that 25.3 dimension line is taken from. Normally the 25 foot would be a right angle to the property line, but if I do that, it doesn't intersect the dock. So I simply did a dimension from the record plan end of the property line to the center of the dock, and it's 25.3. And the same one is 21.2 on the other side. Those dimensions are not in line with each other. So that's why you end up with more distance. This speaks to where do you measure this 25 foot from? So I was trying to be clear and just say from the record end of the property line to the center of the dock is 25.3 feet. I'm not trying to create anything that isn't there. Those are dimensions from AutoCAD. As far as the water depth, again, we've been through this many times. The data, we're talking about average water levels. You can't go out there in August when we haven't had rain in months and say, okay, that's the average water level of the pond. It simply isn't true. We verified that we had adequate depth, which was the 2 feet. It was 2.1 feet where the stake was, and that was in July, just the last time that we were heard. And that was still after a very dry month of July. So for the majority of the time, other than the month of August, probably, the pond is at 2 feet. When I shortened the dock, I shortened it to exactly 2 feet. The original plan, I think, showed 2.1 feet. So I only shortened it till we get to my data of 2 feet.
2 feet of what?
Sorry?
2 feet of what? I was out there the day you moved it and it's 15 3/4 inches.
Yeah, but we're talking about the average water level.
No, we're supposed to be talking about the average seasonal low water level, which is defined. It's defined you're just using something that more suits your purpose.
No.
The average seasonal low water level as defined in the Yarmouth regulations is, quote, the present arithmetic mean of low water heights observed over a 1-year period using the best available data as determined by the DEP.
Correct. So the survey was done in the fall or towards the winter. And then I re-verified that we had 2.1 feet of water in July. Now that is an average time that's way longer than the 1 month that the pond is low now. We're speaking about averages, not a point taken in 1 day in time.
I understand an average. I'm not a dope. I understand average. Did you get the best available data as determined by the DEP? You're using something that's called OHW, which is just suits your purpose. If you look at the other plan, look at the next one, please. The next slide that showed, I guess, the elevation of the dock. So you're showing 2 feet OWL. 2 feet under decking and existing grade. Well, it's not 2 feet there. You just assume it is. You just put it there because I went out there with a pen mark on my leg and it's 15 3/4 inches. And you just admitted earlier today that it had dropped 7 inches from your initial placement.
Yep.
So you're not using what the regulations require.
DEP
some type of
recognizes
arithmetic issue.
Through the chair, could I make a comment?
Yes, please, Dan.
Sure. Dan Ojala of Downcape Engineering for the record. I'm a civil engineer and land surveyor and helping Mark out with the surveying and some of that work on this. So what we're dealing with here, I think is simply a drought situation. If you look at the quadrangle map, there's a pretty severe groundwater gradient in this area. Our, just to the east of us, Big Sandy Pond is at elevation 15 feet above sea level. We're marked at about 11. And so it's a 4-foot gradient drop straight towards us. And then what do we have? We have Thornton Brook leaving Jabinette's Pond. And so what that means is that there is a constant groundwater flux into this pond and then leaving this pond. But seasonally, you can have, droughts, and you can't look at a 2 or 3 month drought and say, aha, that's ordinary low water. I think that Mark is more accurate in that, and that we're probably very closer at 2 feet. And that normally, in a normal year, when you have some rain, a couple inches at a time here and there throughout the summer, it wouldn't get this low. And so I think it's unfair to take a drought and to measure it now and say, aha, that's the low water. That would be my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Dan.
I appreciate that.
Mr. Rosales, we're gonna let the engineer speak to us. We're gonna let the commissioner, if you have the things to say, you need to come through me first.
I apologize. I apologize.
We're not recognized right now, though.
You're
all right,
correct.
so please hold on. Mark, did you have anything further to say on that?
No, I think Dan brings up a good point. We're in a specific circumstance of a drought, so we can't use this as a data point. It could be part of an average over time, but it's not. We're definitely not in average circumstances right now. The pond water level is certainly controlled by that concrete weir at the end, and that's what I use for my data, because there is no data at this point. We couldn't,
right.
The town didn't have any, we said all that. So I think my reasoning is solid, and I think nature supports that.
Yeah, I don't think you can do the same. You can't. Mr. Rosales was basically doing the same thing he was accusing you of doing, was looking at taking a measurement at a point in time when it was particularly low. I mean, because of a drought condition. So it's just something to consider.
I understand.
Dan,
did you have a comment? I didn't mean to step on you there.
I would appreciate that through the chair. So the only other thing is that Mark is accurate. The iron pipes are referenced in the deed, and seaward of that or towards the pond of that, it is, it's a little bit questionable how you would extend the lines, but that very lightly dashed line goes precisely that record distance between the two pipes. And if you were to go up that dashed line to the center of the pier, it's exactly 25.00 feet right now. So I think it could be argued that we do not need a variance to the south. We would need a variance to the north. But again, I'm particularly swayed by the fact that the DEP routinely grants 15 foot to the, and we're very conservative, I think, in that measurement. But I think rotating to the north would alleviate the the visual impact of the abutter. And it's just a few months during the summer that it's out here. It's not in the middle of winter. You've got an unrestricted vista all during the off season.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Thanks for pointing that out. I did not. That was not readily obvious to me that was the location of the pipe, the iron pipe that marked the boundary.
It's the lot line goes down and it discusses the pipes and so forth, and then extensions beyond that. I mean, you could argue endlessly about exactly how the pie is shaped and exactly where what is. But one thing is certain is those two pipes were there in 1985 when we located them, and they're mentioned in the deed and so forth. And we are 25 foot clear of that pipe on a perpendicular line. The diagonal that's shown now at 25.3 is in excess of 25, but it's only because it's pulled on a diagonal. The hypotenuse is at 25.3. The adjacent distance is 25.000.
Yeah, that's okay. That was not obvious to me at first, and then until somebody, I guess Mark, pointed that out. But that makes much more sense now from what I can understand. So, is there any further discussion amongst the commission? I will go back to audience one last time. Is there anything new to add to this conversation? Mr. Rosales.
Well, I'm still scratching my head as to the measurements there. I mean, I don't write the rules. Any property line, it requires a variance. I look at the rules of the variance and they can only be given with certain criteria. And I don't think that they've made their case. The burden is on them to do that. We've been on that pond nearly 50 years. There's nothing really different about this year's water level than it's been anywhere near in the last bunch of years. So I don't create the issues, but the regulations are there for a reason. You open it up for one, we're gonna have a whole bunch of other ones. The float, I don't know who put it there. It's out there in the middle of the pond. It really shouldn't be there, but the pond is a scenic beauty, and for all those years, the previous people, they just took their kayak and just walked it into the water, just like I do with our rowboat. Pull it on the beach, walk it into the water. This dock, there's nothing but aesthetically ruin our vista, number one.
Okay,
Really
thank
doesn't
you.
do anything else to do anything else.
All right, thank you. You've made your point. And again, to understand that aesthetics are not something that we can consider for this board. Mr. Misra, would you like to make a comment? Mr. Misra, you had your hand up?
Yes. Can you hear us?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm speaking on behalf of my wife, Karen, and myself, who are the joint owners of the house. We would really like to request the commission to award this dock. It's a, like previously explained, it's a temporary structure. It stays in for roughly 5 months and then it's out. The big concern for us is that when we are using canoes or we even have a paddle boat, we are actually dragging it through that vegetation area, right, abutting where the shoreline ends and the water begins. I've been told that we shouldn't be disturbing that vegetation. In fact, at one time, I wrongly assumed that we could rake it and make it more usable. And I was told in no uncertain terms that we can't do that. We cannot. And so this decking actually allows us not to disturb that vegetation. Our plan is not to anchor any boats or floats or even as was taken by the abutter to the south. They took a picture of a flamingo float that we had and then made an assertion that we would be attaching it to the end of the dock, the pink flamingo float. There is the provenance of this, or the provenance of any particular owner around this pond, whether they're 50 years or 2 years, does not give any more right to anybody else to say, well, they have a bigger right because they've stayed there for 50 years and there, so their views should be untrammeled. And our plan, we enjoy the view just as much as any of the other inhabitants around the pond. We are conscious, very conscious, in terms of the environment. We don't want to damage it. And we think in many ways, this dock actually helps us maintain that. We would obviously we've been doing it. We take the canoes out of the water. When we're done, we pull them up on land. We are, basically that is our intent. Our intent is that the two of us and our children and their spouses eventually would enjoy this land just like anybody else around that pond. And that's our intent. It is not to intrude upon anybody else. Enjoy.
Great. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Misra. Anybody else in the audience who has any comments, questions, concerns on this project? Raise your hand electronically. I see none in the audience, so go back to the commission. Any further discussion among the commissioners?
Nope.
If not, may I have a motion?
Can you ask Kelly her point?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I asked Kelly, but Kelly.
No, I'm all set.
Okay.
The only, sorry, I'm not all set. I just wanted to request that any order of conditions include the each of the regulations with regard to seasonal docks, which included the materials and graded decking, etc., and that I would include those in an order of conditions if it was approved.
Okay, so noted. All right, so would somebody like to craft a motion?
I'll give it a try, Ed, or Paul, do you want to do it? Go
No,
ahead, Paul.
You go right ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Tom.
Put in the affirmative. I make a motion that we approve the variance and the project as stated. And Kelly, that is with the aluminum pier and the grading on it. Is that what you said?
Yes, and just any relevant conditions under the bylaw.
Okay, so stated. Thank you, Ed.
All right, thank you, Tom. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Paul. Kelly, would you call the roll?
Bishop? Bishop? We lost.
Did we lose Mark?
Unmute.
Aye. Sorry about that.
Durkin?
Aye.
Bernstein?
Aye.
Lawrence?
Nay.
Oops.
Aye.
Huggins?
Aye.
Mulhern?
Nay.
We have 5 for the project and 2 against. So the motion carries to approve the project.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Mr. Rosales. Thank you, Mr. Misra.
Thank you, everyone, as well. I appreciate your considerations very much.
All right, next order.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask if that is what they approved as having the dock cocked, rotated to the north about 5 feet?
That
Or
will include the
plan as it is?
rotation.
Okay.
Yeah, that he had agreed to making that rotation.
All right, we'll get that plan to you as soon as we can.
Okay, actually, yeah, we should make sure that includes that in the motion.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that.
Thank you, Ellie. Tom, do you agree to that?
Yes, certainly.
And Paul, all right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so we'll just make sure that we include the revised plan then.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
All right, so next, the order of business, another continued hearing from July 16th, 2020 for SE 83-2242, Francesco Melandri, 35 Andora's Lane, Yarmouth, Massachusetts, after the fact coastal engineering structure and retaining wall on a coastal bank and beach nourishment on a coastal beach. And Jen, I think you're here, Jen Crawford. I thought I saw. And is that you, Jen, with the 16127560942?
I've allowed them to speak. Oh, there you go. I've unmuted.
Hello, this is Matt Farrell. Can you hear me?
Okay, Matt. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm going to start out, and then Jen is also on the call, as well as Brian Wall and the owner, Francisco Melandri. So I'm representing the Melandri family. As per the letter dated July 31st from Kelly Grant, we've separated the proposals into 2 areas: requested work under a new notice of intent, and then the restoration work for the enforcement order. So the notice of intent was revised. The revised date was August 11th to include permitting the existing bulkhead. It's at the toe of the coastal bank. The existing retaining wall that's up on the slope of the coastal bank. We're also proposing beach nourishment, vista pruning, a new landing at the bottom of the existing stairs to the beach. So that's the language basically defined in the new notice of intent. And then my office also prepared beach nourishment and beach profiles. We did 3 different profiles of the beach. We're proposing 5 to 6 inches of sand nourishment to be added to the beach, all landward of mean high water. The total cubic yardage would be 44. And I know that Crawford Land Management also prepared a site plan dated August 11th with respect to this NOI. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Jen Crawford, and she can explain that portion of it.
We need to unmute. I've allowed her to speak, but it still says that she's muted.
That's the 612 number, right?
Yes, I'm assuming that's her because she has her hand raised. Maybe she's having an issue with the audio.
I could kind of continue on and give it a shot until she.
Nope, I think.
All right,
I think
can you
we
hear
have
me
her
now?
Yep, there you go. Go ahead, Jen.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. So, hold on, I'm getting feedback. Give me 1 second. Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Okay, for the record, Jen Crawford, Crawford Land Management. So just as Matt had described, we separated out the information that we had submitted to you into the 2 separate for the NOI filing, 1 in response to the enforcement order. Nothing has changed with the plan for the notice of intent. Just some information disappeared from it, so to speak, because it went on the other plan. But otherwise, that information all remains the same. One clarification that I wanted to make with the addition of Matt's beach nourishment profiles is there is some overlap with that beach nourishment area in conjunction with the proposed salt marsh restoration under the enforcement. And so the clarification that I wanted to make is that if any nourishment is needed, it would not be put on top of the salt marsh restoration, even though Matt's plan just shows the general area. So I just wanted to make sure that that you were aware that, you know, there is that overlap shown, but the intent is not to put sand over the top of the salt marsh. It's actually to help it. Anyway, other than that, I don't have anything else in terms of the notice of intent filing.
Okay, thank you, Jen. I think what I'll do is I'll turn it over to commissioners for questions at this point. So with that, commissioners, any questions?
I have one,
Okay,
Mr.
Rick?
Chairman. I'm generally not in favor of beach nourishment because I feel as though, given time and the natural wave action, the sand that is put in place typically ends up out in the pond or the bay or whatever. But in particular, I have a very difficult time understanding how you would achieve nourishment of that beach, because I don't see any way to get sand to that location. So I wanted to hear what the thinking was in that, please.
Yeah, again, this is Jen. And I think I did include this in part of the narrative, but so the nourishment piece would only really be something that we would want to do if for some reason we had, you know, if we had winter storms or something like that, that dropped that elevation below where we want it to be for the salt marsh restoration piece. That's the goal of the nourishment, is to help keep the beach elevation high enough to support the salt marsh restoration. So there hopefully would be a lot of times where we don't need it at all. If we do need it, the area intended to provide access would be down basically the existing access path where some of the blown down trees were taken out of, which kind of started this whole thing. So that access path is proposed for stabilization under the enforcement order, but it provides a very easy way to access the beach area should we need to do any sort of nourishment activity there.
Thank you, Jen. For some reason, I thought I saw a block at about 3/4 of the way down that, but it must have been just tree debris. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, anybody else in the commission? If not, I'm going to go back to Kelly then. Kelly, your comments?
Okay, so I think most of what is being proposed is quite reasonable, and I support the issuing of an order for it. I wanted to just address the vista management area. From the narrative, it sounds like this is an area that's been traditionally maintained as a view corridor. We don't have any permitting on file for any view corridor management, but it may have been something that predated the regulations. However, that area has continued to be kept clear. So I just wanted to make you aware that the saplings that are in that area at the moment, that are mostly I think, oak saplings, would be removed, and there would be low shrubs maintained in that area. So typically, if we're allowing people to do vista management, it is vista pruning, so pruning of larger trees to allow a view through them rather than kind of keeping an area totally clear of trees. Having said that, given the traditional management of this area and that the planting plan is somewhat beneficial in terms of bank stabilization and also bringing in a variety of native plants that will increase the diversity of plantings in that area, I don't have a real issue with that plan. I wanted to make a comment about there was a mention of cleanup of beach debris in the narrative. And I just wanted to make it clear, and perhaps this can be included in the conditions, that rack on the beach is beneficial and that should remain to the extent practical. Obviously, trash should certainly be removed, and that's welcomed. And then also, there are years when we get excess dead plant material that washes up and creates a thick layer, which can actually damage the vegetation underneath. So I would certainly support removing that. But I would encourage regular rack deposits to remain, because they do help to build up the beach area and provide organic material. So I wouldn't want to see the area kind of like pristine in the way it is managed in terms of removing any of that material that washes up. And I would encourage reporting to be provided anytime there is nourishment proposed, and also that the standard conditions related to providing a grain size analysis and notifications to myself prior, at least 5 days prior, so that a comparison to the native and source material for nourishment can be sought, and that we receive confirmation of volumes and the areas where nourishment is taking place.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. I think the only thing I would change on that would be with the notification for nourishment. I would feel more comfortable going to 14 days, if not 21. Only because that I don't want to have you forced into making a decision because they said 5 days. So I would just ask that it's not that they don't know, or they're not going to know when it comes time for nourishment. So I would say 21 days and 21 days prior notice.
Okay.
All right, any further, I'm sorry, with any further discussion amongst the commission? Is there anybody in the audience who has any comments or questions about this project? Raise your hand electronically. Seeing none, I will go back to the commission. Any final discussion? If not, then would somebody like to make a motion, including the motions that Kelly included as well, the conditions that Kelly included?
This is Ellie, I make a motion that we approve this project with the stipulations that Kelly has mentioned.
Okay, thank you, Ellie. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Rick. Kelly, call the roll, please.
Bishop,
Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Hoops,
Aye.
Huggins,
Aye.
Mulhern.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously to issue the order of conditions.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Jen. All right, moving on to our next order of business. So we're moving into enforcement orders. This is for Francesco Melandri, 35 Andora's Lane, Yarmouth, Massachusetts, restoration work on a coastal beach, coastal bank, land under the salt pond, and associated buffer zone to satisfy an enforcement order. I think that's Jennifer or Jen again.
Yes, it most certainly is. For the record, Jen Crawford, Landry. So this information, for the most part, same as what you saw previous, with the exception of the salt marsh restoration piece of it. At the last hearing, you guys had asked me for a couple of things, one of them being a description for how I completed my soil evaluation, so to speak, across the beach. So I included that in my narrative that I sent to you guys after dividing everything out. So there was that description included there. And then in the meantime, and I know I mentioned this at the on-site as well, but in the meantime, I did a little bit more digging into salt marsh restoration as it applies to areas where there are no existing sort of peat deposits or substrate that is heavy in that organic matter. And I was able to find a document issued by the New York City Parks and Recreation Department for, I don't know if that's the exact one, but their Parks and Recreation Department, because the City of New York has done some extensive salt marsh restoration projects, and it was a very good document. And what it did was it gave me greater confidence in being able to propose salt marsh restoration in areas where we do not currently have some of those remaining peat deposits. So that's exactly what we've done. The enforcement order had asked for 1,700 square feet of salt marsh restoration, and we have provided that. I think the benefit, or what I'm hoping is the benefit to the areas that we've proposed, are that they are at higher elevations than where the existing peat substrate remains. And I think that will be beneficial because we will be able to, my goal is that we're going to be able to plant a higher diversity of salt marsh species, because those higher elevations should support some of the high marsh species versus just the smooth cordgrass, which is appropriate for the low marsh. The other different thing that I proposed as a measure to help keep that salt marsh elevation high, as well as to protect the marsh pillows and new plantings, is to use a fiber roll on the leading edge, the water edge of the salt marsh restoration area, to help protect it from ice and storm debris that might come up, as well as to act as another filter, so to speak, to hold sediment in place until those restoration plugs can become established and do their own job at holding everything in place. The fiber roll is a biodegradable product. It should dissipate on its own and hopefully become recolonized with mussels along that leading edge. One of the things that I also provided at the on-site, and I emailed this information to Kelly, so any of you that weren't there, I would assume that you have it as well. But I did provide just a quick specification sheet of an example of a coir pillow that we would be using for part of the restoration to pre-vegetate those. I also provided a photograph of what that pre-vegetated pillow actually looks like and what it looks like when it's installed. And then I also gave a cut sheet from one of the Living Shorelines documents, and the cut sheet that I provided actually shows basically the exact detail that I have shown on the plan for you, with the utilization of a fiber roll at that leading edge to do just as I've described. So at the onsite, I had mentioned that I wanted you guys to have those documents and that information so that you maybe had a little bit more comfort level that I wasn't just making it up, and that this is something that that is, it's been put out by, the Living Shorelines documentation, and it's a technique that has been proven to work. With that, I believe that is basically, that concludes the update to the restoration plan for the enforcement order. So if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to try to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Commissioners, any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Rick.
It's not so much a question as a statement. First of all, I'd like to compliment Crawford Land for the detail and the thought they put into their proposed solution to this. Their work is very impressive. I do have one concern, though. I'm not sure it's a sufficient amount of area is being proposed for this solution, and I'd be curious to hear the other commissioners' feelings on this.
Okay, thank you, commissioners.
So if I may, they're proposing 1,700 square feet of restoration. And I too have to echo Commissioner Bishop's remarks about Crawford. They have done an amazing job. She was very impressive on site. But considering how much has been lost over the years, I think we should increase the square footage of the restoration that is required, because it obviously has been significantly lost over the last 5 years.
Okay, what are we looking at right now? We're looking at it's still more or less 1-to-1 right now. Is that right?
Yes.
So yeah, I think. I mean, we don't have anything codified, or we don't even have a regulation that really addresses this at this point. But I would think for salt marsh being so important that, I mean, I would like to see a 2-to-1 ratio at least. So, but I'll let that to other commissioners as well. Anybody else on?
Excuse me, Ed, your recommendation is
I'd say 2-to-1.
The Division of Marine Fisheries, correct?
I'm sorry, Tom, you cut up there.
I'm sorry. Your recommendation of 3-to-1 is the same as that proposed by the Division of Marine Fisheries.
Right. I mean, I would like to see preferably 3-to-1. There may be a question of, the ability as I don't know if they'd be able to get a full 3-to-1 ratio.
So a minimum of 2-to-1?
But a minimum of 2-to-1, right?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would agree to 2-to-1.
Okay.
two to one with how many square footage of loss are we talking about here? The 1,700 square feet or the 2,310 square feet?
Well, it's I think it's the 17 is what we're agreeing as the, I think that's right, if I'm understanding this right?
Okay.
So we'd be looking for at least double that. I mean, like I said, I think we should aim for the 3 to 1, but I just don't know if they have room for that.
I'd like to hear Kelly's input on that, on whether she feels that's something that can be, Kelly and Jen's, something that can be attained.
No, I don't, without being able to do that, sorry, it's Kelly here, without being able to do the actual measurements on the plan. But by looking at it, it would be 3 times what is shown on this restoration plan. So I'm assuming that you wouldn't have quite enough space for a 3 to 1 mitigation, but it should be, I guess, to the maximum space allowed on the beach. So you would be pretty much filling that entire lateral beach space with the salt marsh restoration work. At the thickness landward that it is shown on the plan. So that would be including the low marsh and the high marsh. Because I think the total that's shown on this plan is the 1,700. If you can see it properly. And I know there'll be some discussion about that. Sorry.
Dance like no one's watching.
Discussion about that as to that the enforcement order didn't require 1,700 square feet of restoration. It called out that approximately 1,700 square feet of salt marsh resource area had been lost and just required a restoration plan to address that. And speaking with DMF about their 3 to 1 restoration comment, the reasoning is that a restored marsh is never as successful or productive as an undisturbed marsh, which is why the state agencies in a situation like this will require a 3 to 1 restoration to make up for the loss in success and productivity of the restored marsh. So ideally, to the maximum extent that the room allows on the beach, I would be suggesting that the 3 to 1 be based on that 1,700 square feet that was lost. Now, I know I'll show you a couple of images just to illustrate where the 1,700 came from, so just so that's clear. And I think we looked at this previously during the enforcement hearing, but this is a 2012 aerial image that shows an area of vegetation that appears, based on the similarity to the neighboring properties, appears to be salt marsh, especially because it has the beach area kind of landward of it, which is typical of salt marsh, and it matches the surveyed plan that was produced around the same time, I think 2012. The surveyed plan for the septic indicated the salt marsh in very similar shape to what's shown in the aerial image. And this is what the 1,700 square feet was based on. Now in the, I have the restoration plan originally just said that this area here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, that this area here was the remaining peat deposit, which was where salt marsh was therefore shown to be removed from, and Jen's investigation of the site also found some remnants in this area at the other end of the beach. And that is in line with this image here, which shows this straight line, shows these areas here. So what may have happened is that back in sometime after 2012, between there and 2015, this central area of the beach was cleared of salt marsh. And these areas here, which are now gone, but there are peat deposits remaining, were removed at a later date, which is why perhaps the peat deposit is still, there are still remnants there of those. I would be open to hearing from Jen and her professional capacity as to whether that seems likely based on these two images. It seems like the contention is that there wasn't salt marsh in the central part of the beach and that was all Phragmites, though the images don't really seem, and the site plan don't really seem to indicate that. So that's why the 1,700 square feet is based on this entire area of salt marsh here, rather than just these two small parts at the ends of the beach. I just rambled there.
So,
Thank you, Kelly.
No, that all
so
makes
this is
sense.
Jen. I know that Attorney Wall is going to want to respond as well, but so two things that I can tell you are that when you look at aerial photos, you can, in a lot of the newer aerial photos, like the one from 2015, if the one from 2012 was as clear as the one from 2015, you can typically distinguish between salt marsh and Phragmites because of the color. Phragmites appears a little bit more on the blue end, and salt marsh appears a little bit more of a bright green. And the only reason I know that is because I look at a lot of aerial photos. In the 2012 image, it's not clear enough to make that distinction just from an aerial photo. So it could very well have been Phragmites that was all the way down on the beach. We do know that the Phragmites kind of started on that, what is the town parcel, and that it marched its way toward the west on the Melandri property. That much is evident just by seeing the stand of Phragmites that's on that town property, and then how it's growing towards the west on the Melandri property, and the density and the number of the density of the Phragmites. So we know that it came from that direction, so to speak. The other point that I want to make is that in the 2013 plan, that plan was done for septic. And when they do septic plans, typically surveyors, obviously they still need to survey resource areas so that they can get the appropriate buffer zone offsets from those areas. But I would be hesitant in saying that a surveyor would delineate between what is salt marsh versus what is Phragmites, because they do occupy for the most part, the same ecological niche. So the 2013 plan does say salt marsh, but my guess would be there would have been quite a bit of Phragmites there as well at the same time. So I know that doesn't give you any answers one way or the other, so to speak, but those were 2 points that I did just want to bring up and to point out about the information on that old plan and the aerial photo. Clearly there's vegetation there, whether it's salt marsh or Phragmites, that is much harder to distinguish given the lack of detail on the 2012 aerial photo, as well as the reason why the survey was done in 2013. Anyway, that's what I want to say. I'm sure Attorney Wall has other comments.
Okay, Attorney Wall, would you like to comment?
Yes, can the board hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, my name is Brian Wall. I'm an attorney and I represent Francesco Melandri in this matter. So the first thing I'd like to say is that my client's family has owned this property since 1966. His grandparents purchased it at that time. It's been in continuous ownership by his grandparents and then him, Mr. Francesco Melandri, that is. They've been great stewards of the property. This all came to light because after some trees were taken down by the tornado storm last year, a neighbor complained, and Mr. Melandri has taken this matter very seriously. He's hired professionals. He's proposed to restore any of the violations that are occurring. But I must say that we would firmly object to a multiple of the salt marsh that's being proposed for the following reasons. As Ms. Grant said, the enforcement order noted that 1,700 square feet were lost. That is not a number that we agree with. Mr. Melandri has told me that there has always been a sandy beach in front of the house running much farther than there is today. Or I should say in the picture of 2012, much like it is today. When we came forth with our original plans, there was 1,200 square feet of salt marsh being proposed, because that's what the team thinks was lost. And that is based upon Jen Crawford's studying of the substrate. She looked where the peat was. And for those that were out at the on-site earlier this week, she showed you that the roots of the Phragmites are very different than the root system of salt marsh. And there's a lot of Phragmites all over the beach. And we are of the opinion that the aerial photos, as Jen went through, actually show Phragmites as opposed to salt marsh. We proposed 1,200 square feet, but the comment from Ms. Grant at the last hearing was that was not enough. She wanted to see more. I think some of the commissioners, if not all of you, agreed. So we went back out to the site. The team sharpened, the pencil, and Jen came up with a plan to propose the full 1,700 feet that was said to have been lost in the enforcement order, even though it's disagreed. And she came up with, as she described in her presentation, to restore the lower salt marsh with the methodologies described in that New York City material. But she also is proposing high marsh because we all know with climate change and sea level rise that there's probably going to be rise here, and that marsh will be there to survive that. So we think that the proposal is quantitatively what staff recommended, or what the order said. It's also qualitatively designed for the site. Another point that I want to make here is the following, is that to the, I guess it's the east side of the property, if you look at that 2012 aerial photo that's up on the computer right now, and also on the 2015, that is the association beach. So in this particular neighborhood, all of the owners on Dora's Lane and Jimmy's Lane have an easement to walk along the property line and then to get to this beach. And I'll kind of spare all the details and just skip to the point here. It fell into tax title, and the town ended up taking the property in the early 1990s. And there's really no one in charge of the property because it's landlocked, even though the town owns it. And the people that have easement rights still are able to get to it. The town cannot get to it. It's not a public beach because there's no public access, even though it's owned by the town. But it's fallen into a state of disrepair, and it's here where the Phragmites arrived. Again, for those that were on site, there aren't any Phragmites right near this location, but across the pond, within sight, there's 2 patches of it. And I'm not a scientist. I'm not going to say that's exactly where it came from, but it seems to make common sense that the Phragmites came from there. And then with no one in charge of the association beach, they've flourished, and they've been coming over onto the Melandri's property. And we would suggest to you that and we said this the last time, that Mr. Melandri, rightly or wrongly, has been trying to control the Phragmites, and he's been removing them from the beach. So we would suggest that there's a lot of other reasons why we think the numbers that are being discussed right now are not necessary. They're not justified. It's also important to remember that restoration plans are supposed to restore what was lost, not to be punitive to the property owner. And that segues to my final point on this. It was not really covered too much by Jen in her oral presentation, but it's in our written materials. Part of what Mr. Melandri is proposing here is Phragmites management. And he's doing it through the protocols that are required. The stems are going to be cut. They'll be put, Roundup will be put on them at the proper season. And he actually discussed out at the on-site trying to work with the town to control the Phragmites on the beach property to stop them at their source. And I would suggest that if the reason, and I heard Ms. Grant say this, the proposal for a multiple of the salt marsh is because of this concept that new restored salt marsh is never as successful as natural salt marsh. Well, I would argue to the board respectfully that with the Phragmites management component here, that is going to qualitatively make the environment better. That will help the marsh come back by itself because removal of the invasive will allow the native to grow. So we would respectfully submit that our increase from 1,200 square feet to 1,700 is sufficient, especially when taking into account the Phragmites management. And I would ask the board to take that into account in its considerations and deliberations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Wall. Comments from the.
Mr. Chair, may I just, I'm sorry, one last
yeah.
comment. I think the board also knows this. The Phragmites management and the salt marsh restoration is very, very expensive. And so I would again ask the board to take into account Mr. Melandri's proposal to manage the Phragmites on the site. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there discussion among the board? Questions? Jen, Phragmites is certainly a plant of disturbance, is that right? Jen?
I maybe that when I was.
I'm here.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Okay, there.
Sorry about that. So yes, Phragmites, like all invasives, are opportunistic. I don't believe with Phragmites, obviously if an area like where soil disturbance takes place, that's always an opportunity for invasives. But I think with Phragmites, other types of disturbance, it also takes advantage of. So for instance, with Phragmites, if you have any sort of change in water elevations, tidal regimes, if you have, you have dams put in and other things like that. So I think that Phragmites can be very advantageous, even if there's not soil disturbances, so to speak, because it is one. It's not necessarily an upland plant. It's in this intertidal zone, so to speak. Does that answer your question? Kind of, sort of.
I mean, I'm just making a statement. I mean, but if your contention is that it's not, it wasn't the occurrence of Phragmites was not created by disturbance of soil, then I don't disagree that there are other reasons for Phragmites invasion, and certainly in this case, change in water level would also be probably the second thing I'd look at after disturbance. But if that were the case, clearly we have increasing tide levels, or our tides are rising, the water levels are rising, so we're not moving toward brackish inundation. We're moving closer to the salt end the salty end of it, which they don't typically thrive in. So,
but what I would also, to that end though, if we're talking about sea level rise, we're also creating a situation where salt marshes are being drowned. And so if they don't have that high marsh readily established that can then migrate to low marsh species, the low marsh just starts to dissipate as well. The other notable thing about Phragmites and Japanese knotweed together, especially when Japanese knotweed grows on like riverbanks, so to speak, is those two plants are extremely good at having a piece of root material being broken off and being carried someplace else by water, whether that be tide, river, whatever it might be. And they are very, very well adapted at spreading that way through their root systems. So I think that it is not an accurate assumption to make that Phragmites is growing here because of some sort of soil disturbance, because this plant spreads through many other mechanisms. And I think the source of the Phragmites at this property, I believe, was probably from the adjacent property, the one that is now owned by the town. I don't know what time frame all of that might have happened. I'd have to go back and see if we could find it on aerial photos. But I do think that the source or the beginning point for the Phragmites in this stretch of the coastline here on Fallon's Pond was either right around that property line or on the, right around that property line, that adjacent property line with the town. That would be my best guess based on looking at the site conditions.
Well, I know, I mean, I don't disagree with the fact that both Japanese knotweed and Phragmites both will be highly invasive and can result as a small part of a plant cutting of a plant root or part of the plant. But again, if you go back to the idea that if it's not soil disturbance, if it's rising sea levels bring increased salinity. If what you're contending is that the salt marsh is dying because of being inundated in salt, then that would preclude the presence of Phragmites, which is far less salt tolerant than Spartina alterniflora.
Right. I didn't mean to deduce that same statement. All I meant was that with tidal things in fluctuation, it brings opportunities for opportunistic plants like Phragmites.
Right, so I don't know if we're going to decide this, Jen. So
yeah, exactly.
We should move on. I'll move on because I'm as much fun as I'm having this discussion with you. I don't know if the rest of the commission is enjoying it as much. So I will go back to the commissioners and ask if there's any further comments or concerns. Paul.
Yeah, I appreciate all the discussion. A lot of things that are quite complicated in a certain way. But, you know, when I take a look at it and take a look at the pictures that are presented and consider some of the history of the property, you know, as little as I know about it, it seems a lot of this has to do with the effort that was taken by the owners going back many years to maintain, especially I'm thinking of that beachfront area. And is it possible in all that effort, and this is what we're saying, that more was disturbed than can be blamed, for example, on Phragmites and all that sort of thing, and that there has to be responsibility for that disruption, as well-intentioned as it might be over the years. And 1,700 square feet maybe doesn't just quite cut it in terms of some of the analysis of Kelly. I don't put words in her mouth, but it seems in reading some of the stuff, that's what's being said. And so to really do the job right, that area, it seems, needs to be a bit larger than the 1,700. And that's what I'm kind of getting out of this conversation. You know, there's a lot of effort being made, but the property's been owned for a long time, and a lot of effort. You know, a little seawall was built, and access to the beach was created, and many other things. So this is just trying to rectify some of the well-intentioned but maybe erroneous work that might have been done on that beach. I don't know if I'm wrong about this, but that's what it sounds like to me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I don't disagree with that. Anybody else? All right, is there anybody in the audience who has any interest or comment on this project? Last chance for the audience. right, back to the commission.
Brian Wall just put up his hand, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Attorney Wall.
I think I'm still on audio. Can the board hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So I just want to pick up on what Mr. Huggins just said a minute ago. I can't in this electronic age talk to my client like I can when we're in town hall and I can go whisper in his ear. So I don't exactly know how he would react to what I'm about to say, and I don't actually have authority for what I'm about to say. But I would suggest that if what Mr. Huggins is saying is we need to add a little bit more, maybe another 100 or two, or even round up to 2,000 square feet, that, Mr. Melandri would probably be agreeable to doing that. But what the board was talking about was, I heard numbers of 2 and 3 times the number. And I'm kind of bad at math. That's why I'm a lawyer, but we're talking about 1,700 square feet up to what, 2,400 or 3,400, and then and even up to 5,000 square feet. So I would just respectfully submit to the board that, first of all, we think the 1,700 is sufficient, especially in the context of the Phragmites management that's being proposed. But if the board wants more, we probably could handle 200 or 300 square feet. But I would respectfully submit that Mr. Melandri would not agree to and would object to a multiple of the number. Thank you.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chairman? It's Kelly.
Kelly.
So the total number of disturbance of salt marsh as you see it, what is that number of the amount of salt marsh that was disturbed in your opinion, based on the site investigation?
Well, I can answer that, Kelly, in a qualitative, not quantitative way, because I'm not the scientist on the table here. But as I said, the property's been in the family from the 1966 to be precise. And what Mr. Melandri explained to me was that there was a dock there. I think those that went to the site visit saw 2 remaining pilings. And actually in the 2012 photo, there's a boat there. But Mr. Melandri explained to me that ever since he was a child, there's been a sandy beach down there with marsh on the left and the right where the restoration is being proposed. And as he said, we would admit wrongfully, but this was not a malicious attempt to get more sandy beach. He was trying to control the Phragmites, and he was doing it with pitchforks. And when he was taking out some Phragmites, he was also taking out salt marsh. And so that's why I think from a qualitative perspective, we're putting back what was destroyed. I would turn it over to Jen or Matt for a more accurate number.
All right, Jen.
Yeah. So I honestly think it's a really hard question to answer, which is why I went and did the site investigations that I did, because we know that salt marsh grows in this mucky organic matter peat substrate. So that was the first logical place to go. So we know at a minimum, as far as my investigations go, that there was the 200 square feet on the east, and then the roughly 570 that I found on the west. So I think that goes without saying that that salt marsh would have been supported with that type of substrate. I think that that would be the minimum, just based on those. And unfortunately, I don't have data from earlier, other than just this past season. In terms of more, it's like I said, it's honestly so hard to tell. It's so hard to tell. The area was maintained by the family for so many years. I just don't know. And with the aerial photography, not being as clear as it is nowadays, it's really hard to tell what was growing there in 2012. But what I can tell you.
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah.
All right, carry on.
I was just going to say, but what I can tell you is that I believe for sure that on the west there was 570 square feet of salt marsh vegetation, and on the east, at least the 200 square feet where we found the peat deposits. That much I can tell you concrete.
Okay, so we're looking at a minimum of 770 that is demonstrated that it did exist there and it is no longer there. So I guess where I'm getting at is, as this proceeds through permitting, it sounds like that the other state agencies are going to require a 3-to-1 restoration because of, you know, the reasons that were provided earlier with regard to restoring from degraded salt marsh. So I guess that is one way that we could look at it. Is I tend to think that the salt marsh was more extensive based on the evidence that I've seen. But if we can clearly see right now that there's at least 770 square feet of salt marsh that was lost, and we multiply that number by 3, excuse me, then we've got 2,300, just over 2,300 square feet. That is more than likely going to be required by the state as this proceeds through permitting. So I'm thinking that at least that should be a number that we're considering as the 2310. And that's a very minimum based on Jen's findings. So is that a number to the commission that would be acceptable to move forward with?
I think it would be to me.
Would be to me too, Tom Durkin.
Paul Huggins.
Yeah, I agree. That's more than the 1,700 that is they're asking for, and it's not so outrageous that it would be financially decimating to everything that they want to do. Also,
I agree, David Bernstein.
Yeah, I think it's just doing quick calculations. If we're saying 1,700, they're saying 770. The average of that, if you take the arithmetic average, that works out to be 1,235 square feet. You double that, that's 2,400. So we're right in the ballpark there. So that's something you could live with 2,400 square?
If the board wants an answer to that, maybe what we could do is just table this and you take the next hearing, and I'll call Mr. Melandri on his cell phone, and then we could retable this and we could get the board an answer. I would suggest that it does make sense in the sense of if you make findings of the 770 that is gone and there's evidence that supports that number, and then the 3 times that, it's a finding that I think makes logical and factual sense versus just kind of pulling numbers out of the air. But I can try to call him if you would give us the courtesy of tabling, or if you want to just if everyone would get a drink of water for 3 or 4 minutes, I can call Mr. Melandri and get right back to you.
How about we, if it's all right with the board, let's table this for the moment. We handle the certificates of compliance. Those are they fairly easy, Kelly?
Fairly easy, yes. At least the first few are, and then we should be able to get through those pretty.
Okay, so we'll come through. We'll go ahead, Attorney Wall. We will reconvene this hearing. Actually, if I could get a motion to reconvene this hearing after we take up all of the certificates of compliance, we'll come back to this hearing, if that's all right with the board.
So moved.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
For a second.
Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Rick, yes.
Okay, Kelly, could you call the roll?
Oh, sorry. You caught me mid. Bishop?
Aye.
Durkin?
Aye.
Lenstein?
Aye.
Lawrence?
Aye. Aye.
Huggins?
Aye.
Mulhern?
Aye.
And sorry, can you just confirm for me who made that motion and seconded it?
Ellie made it, Tom second.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll be right back after the certificates of compliance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wall, or Attorney Wall. Right, moving on. Next order of business, certificates of compliance. The first 2, are they ready to go? Can we take them both at the same time, Kelly?
Did she get beamed up?
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yes, the two Flake Yard Lane COCs handled in one go if you'd like.
Okay, so if I could have a motion to issue the certificates of compliance for SE 83
1680.
1680, thank you, Rick, 15 Flake Yard Lane, and SE 83-1839, 15 Flake Yard Lane,
With an ongoing condition
with
for,
ongoing conditions
with 1839.
for 1839. Is there a motion to that effect?
So
So
moved,
moved.
David.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Ellie, for seconding. Kelly, could you call the roll?
Bishop,
Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Oops,
Aye.
Huggins,
Aye.
Mulhern.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right, next order of business, another certificate of compliance. This is for SE 83-1976, 12 Jesse's Lane, Yarmouth, Massachusetts. Kelly, what hell's this?
For you, Josh. There's the carrots and chicken. We forgot to buy dog food. He's eating really well.
So, we again have two certificates of compliance. The first one, 1976, that's the one we just opened, right?
Right.
Okay, so this was for the house and the mitigation plantings. Everything appears to have been completed per the order of condition. Some of the mitigation plantings were changed out for different species, but the plant density and the planting area are all the same, and they're all locally native plants. So I don't see any issues with issuing the certificate of compliance.
Okay, so we're all good with that then?
Yeah. That was,
So do I have a motion?
just to point out one thing, that the restoration of the bank was done very recently with beach grass. So it hasn't had time to become established, but that was not a condition of the order that it remain open. So taking it at the value that it has been planted. I don't know if you want to include something to the effect of maintaining those plantings, that there is no condition in the order with regard to that.
Yeah, I think we need to ensure that the bank, I mean, because it's the bank, right? So, I mean, it's kind of important.
So we could have an ongoing condition to maintain bank restoration plantings.
Abigail, your dinner is ready.
Someone's dinner's ready.
Not mine, but I make that motion that we issue the COC with the ongoing condition that the marsh grass for three growing seasons, Kelly?
Well, the bank vegetation should just be maintained as an ongoing condition, so you don't need to put
Okay. Okay. So I make that motion as what Kelly said.
Okay, thank you, Ellie. Is there a second?
Second, Paul.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Kelly, call the roll, please.
Bishop,
Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Oops,
Aye.
Higgins,
Aye.
Mulhern.
Must be her dinner that's ready.
Still have. Pat, can you hear us? Muted. Can we see her, or is she?
No, but we can't see Ed anymore either, so I don't know.
No, I don't see Pat.
Okay, well, we have a 6.
Yeah.
Zero vote anyway, even without Pat, so the motion carries.
All right, next order of business, another certificate of compliance for SE 83-2225, 12 Jesse's Lane, Yarmouth, Massachusetts.
With this one, this was the replacement boat shed that was done quite recently, so you'll remember this. The work is largely completed per the order, except that the order of conditions had a condition that flood vents were installed, and they haven't been installed at this point. I had an update from the engineer today that they are planned to be installed next week. So you may want to look at continuing this to the next meeting before issuing the certificate of compliance for that.
Okay, I would suggest we should wait until they're actually in. That's my opinion.
I agree.
So moved.
All right, so you're moving to continue, Tom?
Continue, yes.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Is there a second?
Ellie.
Thank you, Ellie. Kelly, call the roll, please.
Bishop,
Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Hoops,
Aye.
Huggins,
Aye.
Mulhern.
Aye.
Motion carries to continue.
All right, are we, as Attorney Wall, are you back?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we are going to reopen the continued hearing, or sorry, the tabled enforcement order for Francesco Melandri, 35 Andoras Lane, Yarmouth, Massachusetts, restoration work on a coastal beach, coastal bank, land under a salt pond, and associated buffer zone to satisfy an enforcement order. Mr. Wall, what did you find?
So as you can imagine, Mr. Melandri is watching the Zoom hearing, but obviously from a different location, but I was able to reach him by cell phone. He continues to maintain that there was less salt marsh removed, but he has been watching, he understands the sentiment of the board, and he will agree, he will accept a finding of 700 square feet and restoration of 2,300. If I had those numbers right, he'll accept the numbers that we were discussing.
Okay, is the commission, any further discussion among the commission, or are they satisfied with that? Rick?
I'm satisfied.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
I am too.
I am too, Pat.
Okay, sounds like we have a plan then. Do we have anything further to discuss with this then?
So can I just confirm that was 770 square feet?
770 square feet impacted, so 3 times whatever that is.
3-to-1 restoration was 2,310. My math is right.
It is.
Can I just quickly refer to my notes just to check there wasn't anything else that I needed to
By all means.
bring up?
I don't want you to start eating while I'm still. Everyone comes to the table.
The state confirmed that with the fiber roll being below the mean high water, that a license or permit will likely be required for that, but that's out of our purview. And I think it's going to be really important to commit to some monitoring and progress reports on the restoration work and contingency for when things are not working. For example, with regard to using the chunks of peat that have been placed above the wall or behind the wall. If we're looking at using those for the restoration, there should be a contingency if that doesn't work, which I know there, I guess, is built into the design by the, the methodology that's been proposed originally. It didn't include the use of that peat, but I think that the commission should be kept up to date on a regular basis, and that should be included in the order as to what that time frame should be or what milestones should be for that reporting, and that there be some flexibility in being able to make changes if things are not working.
Okay, so we're looking at 3 years monitoring.
Yeah, so 3 years monitoring, and would that be on an annual basis?
I think an annual basis as a minimum, and then if there's any changes or alterations that have to be made, then obviously they have to report that beforehand, before the annual report. I would just make the annual report due like October 1st of every year.
That would make sense from an ecological standpoint, because you could report after the growing season.
Okay, and then that would include the Division of Marine Fisheries conditions in the order as written.
Right.
Covers the 3-to-1 as well.
And I think I would also add just the caveat that if there's any change in restoration, the personnel doing the restoration, that the applicant needs to inform the conservation administrator immediately.
And have them approved.
Right, to approve the whoever the replacement is.
Okay. So in this instance, the motion for the commission would be to approve the restoration plan, right? There's not a permit associated with it.
Yes, that's correct.
We would want to call out though specifically the amount of feet required.
Yes, so I can confirm in a letter the findings so that we have that documented, the 770 square feet, acknowledgement of that, and the 3-to-1. Now, in all likelihood, that restoration is going to be, we'll need to see a plan obviously for that restoration. So do you want to continue to see an updated plan, or, because I'm assuming that the way this is going to come out on a new plan is that it's going to be low marsh and high marsh proposed as it is for the areas currently. Do you want to be able to review that plan before making the final approval of the restoration plan, or are you okay to proceed just with the numbers?
I would like to continue only for the purposes of reviewing the updated plan. So that's just the way I think we should continue to next time around, September 3rd.
So we make a motion to approve the numbers, but continue just for the updated plan.
Right. And we won't take any new testimony or anything else. It's solely for the approval of the new plan.
I agree.
All right, we good with that?
Okay.
Attorney Wall, you good with that?
I am. I just have a clarification question with regard to the submittal of the revised plan to reflect the findings. Do you require physical, not today, you don't. Do you require any members of the representing team to be present for that? Is it just a ministerial matter and we'll submit it to Kelly?
It's purely administrative. I mean, as long as assuming you do everything that we've agreed to, then it's going to be an administrative thing more than anything else.
Okay, I just asked because it is an expense to the client to have us all here.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, if there would be any issue that we would come up with them, then obviously we would just continue it if that's all right, and we would check in with you and Jen and the applicant.
That's more than all right. That's very courteous and we appreciate that.
All right, and Jen, you're good with this?
Yep, I know what I need to put on the plan for you.
Okay, great. Could I have a motion to accept the enforcement order with the conditions as stated?
So moved.
Sorry, to continue to September 3rd for consideration of the revised plan. Sorry, Rick, are you okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Is there a second?
Second, Ellie.
Thank you, Ellie. Kelly, call the roll, please.
Twice.
Chip.
Aye.
Durkin.
Aye.
Winstein.
Aye.
Lawrence.
Aye.
Oops.
Aye.
Higgins.
Aye.
Mulhern.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
I want to thank the commission for taking all the time to hear us and listen and deliberate carefully. I think it was a good process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Walt. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
All right. So we are now moving into violations, and we also have appointment for secretary. I'm running up against a deadline that I'm gonna have to be leaving soon. So I was wondering if we could perhaps go on to the appointment of secretary first. If that would be okay with the commission.
I'm fine with that.
Go ahead.
Okay, so Kelly, you all right with that?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so then if we would just move to the other business for appointment of secretary position, has anybody come forth with the idea that they want to be the secretary, or do we have anybody who wants to be nominated or would like to make a nomination?
Ellie just raised her hand.
Oh, you little bugger.
I thought I saw that.
Yeah,
No, I was scratching my nose.
no, that's the international conservation sign for I want to be the.
Yeah,
the
I sort of figure that.
Are you?
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it.
Are you willing?
It's a question of whether Kelly can understand my scribbling, because I've done it before and she just looked at it and said, "Oh my gosh."
And you're aware of the parameters that we are hoping that you would work under then?
No, not really.
Well, read the or listen to the last hearing, and then you'll.
I only listened to
find
what I
out.
had to, but yeah. Kelly will teach me. She's been very good about that.
I mean, are you good with that, Kelly?
Yes, yes, I am quite happy with that.
Oh gosh,
Okay.
thank you, Kelly.
I appreciate it.
I think we would have a good secretary in Ellie. So I appreciate you've been sort of doing that as a secondary job for many meetings now. So
Just as long as I'm not the assistant admin, because that's just going to blow my head out.
no, you don't have to. You don't have to worry about any. You don't have to do any orders or conditions. You don't have to file anything. Well, you need to file minutes. You'll need to you're required to carry the minutes with you.
Well, I've been filing for the last 4 years, so that's all right.
Okay, so with that, so what I had, well, we have
Yes, I'll
a
accept it,
nomination
so.
for Ellie. Ellie has agreed to accept it. Is there anybody who has anything to say in favor or opposition?
Should there be a formal motion? Since
There
I'm
should be. I was about to ask that.
Ellie's acceptance of this magnificent responsibility.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how many of you put me up to this, Rick.
Who better?
Well, we actually tried to get. We were gonna draft Rick last meeting, but we wanted to see his look of horror and disgust on his face. So,
Ed, do you want a motion?
Yes, I got you. So you made the motion, Tom?
Yep.
I'll second.
Okay. Thank you, David. Kelly, call the roll, please.
Bishop,
Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence.
Am I supposed to vote on this?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Huggins,
Aye.
Mulhern.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Ellie, it's better than working on boats.
Thank you.
Oh, I love boats.
Boy, you don't know what you signed on for. That's all I have.
I have an idea. I don't know what I signed on for. Yeah.
No, you're going to do a fine job, Ellie. We have all the confidence in the world with you. So
Just as long as I don't have to sand the bottoms of boats, I'm good.
no, you're certainly not at the same time, though. Let's put it that way.
No, yeah, that's true.
All right.
Stop
so we're all
laughing,
good with
Pat.
that.
Ed, would you like me to take the violations for you?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Do we have any other work?
You have a
Kelly?
commitment, do you not?
Kelly, do we have anything else that we have to do other than violations?
No, just the violations.
And the
Okay.
update.
All right, Tom. So I'm going to turn it over to you then, if you don't mind.
Okay, thank you for what you've done.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Night.
The next item on the agenda is the violations 94 Pleasant Street, an expanded float system. Kelly, can you bring us up to date on that?
Yes, we have the property owner in the audience, so I'm just allowing her to speak. And I'll just give you a brief update. This is when we went through the docks on Bass River last year and found a number of oversized float systems. This one was permitted for, I just want to make sure I get my numbers right because I, 8x8 float and an 16x8 float, and it currently has an 8x16 float and an 8x20 float. The float I think was changed out in maybe 2000.
2015.
Yeah, 2015. Sorry, is that Maria?
Yeah, hi Kelly.
So that's basically what we have. I did receive correspondence from Maria today if she wanted to speak to that.
So, hello everyone. I'm Maria Marasco, 94 Pleasant Street. Yes, I do have a license from the Mass DPW 1971 for a T-head timber pier with 2 floats and 2 ramps. Sometime when the pier that is now oversized was I think demolished in the Hurricane Bob, and my parents didn't replace it. So in 2015, we decided to replace it, and I relied upon a well-known local dock contractor to comply. And I have to tell you, I didn't even dawn on me that the size was tied to the permit. The only permit that I saw was the larger description. Again, 2 floats, a pier, etc., with no measurements. Now that we track down the measurements, I got copies from the Army Corps of Engineer. I'm going to cut to the chase because it's a long night. I've arranged with Lemco to remove the 18x16 pier, which is off the side of the T. And then next year, if I can afford an 8x8, well, I'll put an 8x8 there to be in compliance with the permit. So Kelly, I will report to you no later than next week when Lemco removes the 8x16 pier.
Okay.
Does that sound reasonable?
Excellent.
Kelly, do you think we should delay this until, continue this until September 3rd?
Well, if she can take action on it and to get it resolved, then I can provide you with an update at the next meeting to confirm that that change has been made.
Okay, that would be fine. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
I apologize. Has there been a second?
I second, Ellie.
Thank you, Ellie. Well, would you call the roll?
Bishop,
Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Higgins.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to thank Ms. Marasco for taking this seriously and resolving it so quickly.
It was not, it was solely unintentional. Again, I relied upon my contractor, and then life got in the way. But I am an avid Bass River rat, as we used to call ourselves, right? And it'll be resolved.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Ms. Marasso.
You're welcome. You all have a wonderful night.
Thank you. Second violation in order is 140 Mayflower Terrace, unpermitted floats. Kelly?
Okay, I'll just change out the. So this was a dock. This is a dock on Mayflower Terrace that was permitted a few years back. It was denied a permit for a dock and float system. So they reapplied for a walkover structure, a boardwalk, I guess, with steps at the end to provide access for swimming and for kayaks. A condition of the order was that there would be nothing moored to the structure and that there would be no floats associated with the structure. And those floats that you see in the image have since been added. There is not a certificate of compliance for the structure. And I did distribute to you the email response from the property owner, who I think is in the audience if you want to read that. So do you want me to run through the email response or speak with the property owner directly?
Perhaps we could hear from Ms. Janino now. Are you available, sir?
Mark Burgess, it looks like, is representing him, so I will, oh, he's already unmuted, so if you want to go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so I was made aware of this a little while ago, and we met with Kelly on site to take a look at it and then discuss some options. The applicant wrote a letter saying why he did this. And I agree with the points in his letter as far as we can all agree that launching a boat, motorboat or kayak or whatever from the, either beaching it to get people on and off the boat or dragging kayaks through the marsh and all that.
We can folks to mute yourself because there's a lot of background noise.
Okay, let me try that again. So we all agree that that kind of use over the marsh is not acceptable to anybody, really, for many reasons. And a ladder at the end of a walkway doesn't really work either. I think it was permitted for steps. So at any rate, the goal that the applicant had all along, apparently, and I'm coming into this as kind of a blind date, but I do understand the issues and I've been to the site and all of that. So what the applicant wanted from the beginning was to get access to the water over the marsh without damaging anything. He does have a motorboat that he keeps a slip at Mayfair. And he recognizes the difficulty of getting in and out of Dinah's Pond. He has no intention of docking a boat at this site permanently. He does want to find a way to be able to bring a boat in temporarily just to pick people up and drop them off within the tide restrictions. And since you can't get a boat in here, it's very difficult at low tide to get a boat in here at all. You know, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy that whatever we can agree that might go here, you know, is going to be limited to the higher tides. So I wanted to float a concept by the board that I've done in other towns, but I don't think we've presented it here. So in some fashion, we all agree that the elevated walkway over the marsh is a great idea. What I've done in other towns is design a fixed platform so it doesn't go up and down, and the platform is at or just above the mean high water line. And then in different instances, I've had steps off to the side down to the beach. Now, in one instance, the town allowed a haul out mooring at the end of this walkway because conservation wouldn't allow a dock, but waterways allowed, the harbor master allowed a mooring. So it was a nice marriage between the two jurisdictions that worked. In this case, Dinah's Pond is a no mooring zone. And I'm not sure why. There seems to be plenty of room, but for the facts, you know, it's a no mooring zone. So again, all the applicants are trying to seek is a solution to be able to bring the boat up temporarily. So if we had a fixed platform at some distance from the existing pier, it would be in you know, some depth of water, and but the platform itself would be fixed at mean high water or higher. I think with sea level rise, we'd probably fix it at least 6 inches or more above mean high water. If you needed if you like that concept, you know, we could that's something that we would look into and just come back to you with an amended a request for an amended order. We're also looking at different title datums or data that we have for that pond. And it's possible that there's more water out there than what was initially thought. So Dan and I are putting our heads together on that one. So that part's up in the air. But what I wanted to ask the commission was, it's kind of late in the season now, me being at the end of August. If Mr. Danino could be mandated to remove these floats immediately at the end of the season as time and contractors can allow, then Dan and I and the applicant would look into solutions that might better meet everybody's needs. But what I would like to ask the opinion of the commission is, let's just say, for example, that we use the existing ramp and there was a fixed platform at the end that might be, say, 4x6 or something like that. Fixed platform. And there's no reason to put stairs to the beach because it's muddy out there. So there wouldn't be anything in contact with the ground other than the supports for this fixed platform. Whether the platform and the ramp have to be seasonal, that's up for discussion as well. But that can be part of the solution. We don't need to go into that tonight. But what I'd like to do is put the concept of that to the board, with the caveat that as soon after Labor Day, as contractors allow, this stuff's got to get removed, and it won't go back in ever unless and until an amended order is put before the commission, which we'll be working on, probably over the next couple of months. So that's the concept I'd like to float by you, no pun intended, and see what you think.
Thank you very much, Mark.
You're welcome.
Comments from the commission?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'm having a very difficult time with this, I must tell you. I have the applicant's letter in front of me stating that he's a retired dentist that has always followed the rules. And he quotes, "I understand that the floating dock was not approved when we went through the process a few years ago." He also said, "I thought I'd just put one in and see what happened." A total disregard for our regulations and the decisions of the commission. I have a fundamental problem with that. So the idea of working with this applicant, now that he's been caught doing something that was clearly not approved, I have a real problem with. I don't know how the rest of the commission feels, but I think, this is something we've talked about before, that the leverage that we have is being usurped by people just disregarding what we decided as a commission. Thank you.
I appreciate your comments, Rick. Is there anybody else?
Well,
Kelly?
I have to agree with Rick.
Kelly?
I'm sorry. I have to agree with Rick, and it's getting to the point where people are, for them, it's easier to ask for forgiveness and keep what they put in than to ask for permission. And if they keep doing this, we have no teeth, and there's no point in us sitting here for 3 hours, 3.5 hours dealing with all these things that we have to deal with. It's a waste of our time if they just frivolously ignore it.
Thank you very much, Ellie.
This is Pat. I agree with Ellie and Rick.
Pat, thank you very much for your comments. Kelly?
I don't really have anything to add to that, aside from that I agree with what you said, that there's a fairly blatant violation of the permit that was issued, and the pretty clear intention of the commission that a floating dock wasn't appropriate in this location. So I agree with the comments that were made.
Kelly, do you feel a fine is appropriate in this case?
I guess that's up for the commission to vote on, but it certainly seems appropriate given how blatant the violation is.
I agree with you. Will the commission comment on the appropriateness of leveling a fine, and perhaps mention the amount in your comments? Anyone?
Yeah, Tom? Paul?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't want to mention any amounts, but anyway, I think because, you know, I mean, I'm sure the doctor has followed all rules and everything, but in this case, he wanted to see what would happen. And I think that what should happen is that he has to take those floats out now. And he has to access his boat from Mayfair Boatyard where he keeps it. And then if he wants to resurrect this project and make another proposal with Mr. Burgess and so on, I think that would be appropriate. But I really, you know, I've learned that the fines could be almost symbolic and slightly problematic, but I really think he needs to remove this. Personally, I think he remove this immediately. Thank you.
I agree with
you very much. David?
I agree with what Paul just said. You know, he needs to remove it and come back with a new proposal sometime, and then we can decide on the new proposal. But this, to me, it's two separate items. One is he in violation of the permit, and we need to do something about that. And then after he removes it, then he can come back and ask for a new proposal.
Because of the disregard for the non-permit, David, do you think a fine is in order?
I do. I have no idea how much, but yes, I do.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Me, I have to agree. I think a fine is required at this point because he, in the letter himself, said, I wanted to see what would happen.
Yep.
Well, this is what's going to happen because it definitely is in pure violation. And I think, I don't know, I think 100 is probably too low because of his cavalier attitude, but I'm going to leave that up to the decision of the board.
My thought is the normal $300 fine. Is there anyone else that wishes to comment on this?
I do through the chair.
Please, Mark.
Okay. All right. Well, we always have to start somewhere with these. And I never like being in the position to resolving a lot of these. And Kelly and I have been doing a lot of them lately. Having said that, I totally understand the commission's position. What I would suggest, I agree, fines are difficult at best. I think the fines, for me, in my opinion, once something like this is discovered, and then if it's ignored, I think that's when you absolutely issue fines. In this case, if the commission is not going to allow it to stay there 1 minute longer than it can, what I would suggest is that you order it out immediately, but not issue a fine, and then we'll work with a contractor to get these things out of here as soon as possible. In whatever way. I mean, the ramp can be unpinned and put up on the dock or hauled up by hand if we need to, and the floats just have to be taken away by a boat and put somewhere. We just have to find somebody to be able to do it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes,
Mark, are those, it's a float, but those stanchions, are they driven into the ground or are they on the bottom? Sitting on the bottom?
I think Nick would have to answer that. I don't know how it was installed.
I think that's the other issue, because if they're driven into the bottom, that was another violation there, not just having a float.
I think the violations here are rampant. I think a fine is most appropriate. I think the removal of these floats and that monstrosity is immediately removed. Any comments on that?
I agree, but I don't know how immediately it's going to happen. And sometimes they wait until after Labor Day to take them out. But I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 posts that are, at least 4 posts that are into the ground, and 2 that are holding the kayaks if those aren't into the ground, as well as the float system itself, which is what size? It looks like it's 8 by...
I think they're 6 by 10s.
Okay.
The posts that hold the kayaks are attached to the side of the float.
Okay.
So there's those 4, the 4 pipe piles are presumably in the ground, but they should be able to come out. They're small. They should be able to come out pretty easily.
Kelly, do you have any comments?
Just a fine up front with a date by which they have to be removed, and then if that action isn't taken, there could be an incremental fine after that, just to provide the necessary push to get it out as soon as possible.
Well, if we set Labor Day as a date for it to come out as suggested by Ellie, a $300 fine up to that point, and then it become incremental beyond that. Does that sound appropriate, Kelly?
Yeah, so when we say incremental, do you mean on a weekly basis or a daily basis?
A weekly basis.
Weekly basis, would you look at $100 per week or a higher amount?
$100 per week would be convincing in my mind, unless somebody else has a suggestion.
And quite honestly, Tom, in 2 weeks, that's before Labor Day. So that would be September 3rd. So it would have to come out before Labor Day weekend.
September 3rd, you're saying?
Yes,
That's 2 weeks.
it's 2 weeks.
Mark, does that sound reasonable?
Well, nobody wants to hear that, of course, but I understand where you're coming from, and I respect the board's position. The problem comes with, what if, now I know Lemco is going to run out, I guess, somewhere on the river and take out some floats. I don't know who put these in or whatever, but what happens if everybody's too busy to come up all the way up here? It's not as easy to remove this float as it is in other places in the river. So what do we do? And I'm not making excuses, I'm being practical, but what do we do if we can't get anybody to come out and do it in that time period?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will not be easy because this is not a standard float. It's a float that was put in with pilings. I completely understand that, but he also did it in a very cavalier attitude, saying, I'll see what will happen. So the onus is up to him to get it out or get fined. I don't know. I'm just very frustrated that he put in these pilings instead of just a float, because a float is a float.
I understand. These pipe piles, they're not permanent. They're never meant to be permanent. I know you guys probably don't deal with them a lot in Yarmouth, but the pipe piles, you can probably go down there and wiggle them out yourself. So I wouldn't worry about them.
Then so be it.
Oh, I know.
I've dealt with the pipe piles ever since I grew up on the river. We had outhauls on them and all that. I'm aware of that, but that's really still no excuse not to get that thing out of there.
I understand. It's a question of manpower.
Mr. Huggins.
Yes. Do we know who put, this thing is taken out every season, at the end of the season every year. How long has it been in, by the way?
I don't think it went in. It went in this season, I believe.
So who put it in, do you know?
I don't know. No.
Okay, you would think that whoever put it in might do the guy a favor and come and take it out.
That's not unreasonable to say that. That's reasonable.
So I'm sure if he worked at it, he'd be able to do it. Thank you.
And just to comment on that, it's Kelly here, that whoever put it in violation. So theoretically, they could also be facing fines. So it would be in their best interest to also move quickly to assist the property owner in removing it.
Yeah, I agree.
And I would be interested in hearing who it was that put it in.
Okay, so I guess what we're talking about is a motion from the commission. Is there anybody who will
Mr. Chairman, can I make one more statement after Kelly's remark? Would we want to level a fine to the dock builder once we find out who it is because he put it in illegally?
I would like Kelly to investigate the circumstances surrounding it. I think it's important that we get it out. I think that the fine be assessed, and then we can talk about it, Ellie, if you would agree.
Okay. I just, she brought up a good point.
Excellent
if he
point.
put it in there, he knew it didn't have a permit. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
We got problems 4 ways to Sunday here. Is there anybody who would like to make a motion?
I make a motion that this float needs to be removed in 2 weeks' time, or a fine of $100 a week will be levied to the owner and possibly the dock builder who installed it.
What about the initial $300 fine?
Oh, is that what we decided was the initial 300 and 100 after that? I'll go with that.
what we were talking about. Do you agree, Ellie?
I agree. I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Very good. Would you call the roll, Kelly?
Bishop,
Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Huggins,
Aye.
Mulhern.
Aye.
Motion moves 6-0.
And through the chair, I have another question.
Certainly.
How does the board feel briefly about the concept of a fixed platform with a ramp going down to solve this type of situation for access? How do you guys feel about that concept?
I think that's an appropriate discussion after the notice of intent is received, Mark.
Okay.
And I want to thank you for picking up on this at such short notice and presenting it to us.
No problem. It's not a position any of us like to be in, but
No.
you know, you guys are a good commission to work through things like this also. So that's another reason why I take these on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The next item on the agenda is 22 Mayflower Terrace. Kelly, can you update us on this?
I can. I'm just changing out the slides. Okay, so this one is also on Mayflower Terrace on Diners Pond, and this is Mr. Oberlander, who has his hand raised, so I will prove to him in a moment. But he purchased the property, I think, in early 2015, and the dock showed up in the aerial photos in 2016. It is a series of ramps and floats that lay on the marsh out to a float with some poles that may be temporary or permanent, I'm not sure. There is no permitting on file for the dock. The property owner says that the floats were on the property when he purchased it, though they weren't in the water. And there is no, I have no Chapter 91 license, and I'd asked the property owner to look into whether there was any record of a Chapter 91 license that had been issued for that structure. I will allow the property owner to speak. If he wants to unmute himself, then you want to ask him any questions.
Mr. Oberlander, are you there, sir?
Yes, I am.
We can hear you loud. Would you please
Okay.
make your statement?
Sure, thank you. So as Kelly stated, we bought the property. The dock and the, I call it the ramp, were on the, in the backyard. So I did some investigating. I actually walked down into the water and found what was an old mooring sitting out there. Put two and two together, figured out how the float sat in the water and the ramp attached to the thing, and I installed it. I was under the impression that the dock came with the house. I had no idea I needed permitting for it. I was under the impression that it had already been permitted through the old owner. He had shown me pictures of a dock from 1970 of that property with a dock, existing out there. So I have been in contact with Down Cape Engineering. They asked me if it just requires permitting or if we got to go in a different direction. So I'm not sure where to head at this point. I did look up that Chapter 91 stuff. To me, unfortunately, it's very confusing. I'm not a very savvy computer guy, so. But I did not find anything under the Chapter 91 either.
Okay. Kelly, do you have any comments?
No, I guess it is pretty worth investigating. I mean, Mr. Oberlander did provide an image showing that the dock had been there a number of years ago, so it may be that it has did predate the regulations. However, if it was never licensed through the state, it's never been looked at by the commission, and as far as I can tell, hasn't been installed for a number of years. I'm just looking back through the aerial images, haven't been able to see any sign of it for a number of years before it returned in 2016. So my recommendation would be that it be removed pending permitting of a dock that meets the regulations.
Very good. Do you think there's a date by which it should be removed?
It is concerning that the ramps are laying across the marsh, so I would certainly like to see those removed straight away, and then the floats removed as soon as they are able.
I would suggest perhaps by Labor Day, certainly, and the land would ramp immediately. Do we have any comments from the commission?
Well, I'm not sure you want to hear my comments, but
Oh,
you know, if it's there, we can put it in. I mean, when you buy the property and it's sitting there, you just assume that it's okay, but you know, that just drives me insane. But I agree, the ramp should be removed immediately, and the float, I think, should be another 2 weeks, and the same person can come in and pull out those piles. It's just, yeah, it's just
I think a fine is appropriate if he does not meet the Labor Day removal.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I mean, this one isn't as cavalier as the other one, but
agree,
you know, maybe $100 a week if it isn't removed by the 3rd of September, instead of a 300 right now and 100 every week, because obviously he, you know, if it's on your property doesn't mean that it exists. Somebody can throw a boat on their property and say, oh, this was my property or my boat, I can put it in. I'm just getting so frustrated with this. I'm sorry, I'm venting.
I think you have a right to vent. Anyone else on the commission have a comment?
Pat, I agree with Ellie.
Thank you, Pat, very much. May I hear a motion? Anybody in the audience who would like to make a comment before the motion is made? Mr. Overlander?
Yeah, so the one thing I have concerns with is if I take this out, which is no issues, I'm gonna have to walk over that marsh grass to get to my boat, which will be anchored out there in the water. So,
Mr. Oberlander, excuse me, you cannot anchor the boat. There's no moorings allowed in Dinah's Pond, so you will have to remove the boats also.
I believe I can have an anchored boat for 14 days. Anchored, not on a mooring, anchored.
You better check with the harbor master on that.
Okay.
Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion that we request that he removes the ramp and the float within 2 weeks. And if not done so, $100 a week after that. And quite honestly, he can take the risk of anchoring his boat out there and having the harbor master hit him with something else.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second, David.
Thank you, David. Kelly, will you call the roll?
Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Huggins,
Aye.
Mulhern. Mulhern. We have.
I think we lost Pat, but we have a
We
majority.
have a majority, so the motion carries.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Oberlander.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda under violations is 222 Pleasant Street, an unpermitted structure, vegetation cutting. Kelly, will you update us on this, please?
Sure. The property owner, Mr. Lloyd, is in the audience. They did ask, his wife couldn't be in attendance, so they did ask that it be continued. So I wanted to leave that up to you if you wanted to continue to allow his wife to participate, or whether you want to go ahead and hear an update on this one.
I think it'd be appropriate to hear from all the people involved, so I think a continuance is appropriate. Could I hear a motion to that effect?
So moved, David.
Very
Second,
good. Seconded by
Paul.
Paul. Thank you, Paul. Would you call the roll, Kelly?
Bishop,
Aye.
Durkin,
Aye.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Lawrence,
Aye.
Huggins,
Aye.
Mulhern. Nope, she's gone. Okay, motion carries to continue to September 3rd.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is commission staff updates. Kelly?
Don't really have anything in particular to update you about. You will have seen that I send a letter requesting that the office assistant position be filled. I did some research of other towns on the Cape and found that we are significantly under-resourced compared to even the smallest towns. So I think the commissioners that have sent messages in support of that letter to the town administration. Other than that, I don't have anything else at the moment. Well, I keep saying I don't have anything else, but I do. There is
Sorry.
no proposed change in the opening of town hall at this point. So we are continuing business as usual, remote meetings and remote working for myself with coming to town a couple of days a week for site visits. So I appreciate everyone's ongoing flexibility with that. And I think that is it.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Paul.
Go to David. He was first.
Okay, David, you're first.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I want to say that if you agree with Kelly about needing an assistant, I urge you all to write a letter to Mr. Napick. I did talk to Mark Forrest about this, and he said that's what we need to do, is put the pressure on him. Kelly's chart, I think, speaks volumes about how understaffed she is. And we certainly don't want Kelly to feel so pressured and so overworked that, well, anyway, we don't want her to feel that way. And the only way that's going to happen is getting an assistant. We can fight for more hours later, which I really think she deserves. She needs the assistant. But let's at least get the 19 hours that was budgeted and I voted on when I went to the town meeting.
I wasn't under the impression that that was in the budget, Kelly.
The money was taken from the wetlands fund for the portion for half of the funding for the position. But that money was just put into the general fund. So
it was taken away from the Conservation Commission administration.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Well stated, David. Anyone else? Paul?
Yeah. Certainly we'll get a letter off to Mr. Napick. Was it Napick? In reading a little bit about it, one of the commissioners, I think it was Ellie, you put in your letter something about was it described as a frivolous request by the administrator?
No, it was described as a non-frivolous.
No, yours.
Request.
Yeah. But I mean, he never commented on that as being frivolous. Did he?
No,
Okay.
but they, they're picking and choosing on who they're hiring and who they're not, because there was a hiring freeze, but people are getting hired for different departments, but Kelly is being overlooked, even though she was acknowledged on having the funding for that. So they're deciding that they're going to fund something else by taking our money and putting it in the general and hiring somebody else. So it isn't a frivolous.
Yeah, I get that. I get
It
that.
it is interesting that the assistant town manager left and somebody else was put into that position.
It's temporary. It's a temporary position right now. They're interviewing for the assistant.
Right, but so that it will be filled.
Who was the assistant? I'm a little bit behind the curve.
I don't think, actually, right now, I don't think they have an assistant.
No, I was told they put Rich left, and I was told they put somebody in there temporarily because Rich left. And what's happening is we're losing lots of good people in town.
Because they're getting fried out.
Right,
getting
exactly.
fried out.
And that's
So
what
Kelly, you
we
can't
don't
leave.
want to happen.
So another question, this might really reveal how far behind I am. All this is done because of revenue decrease, I guess, in town. I'm assuming that people are still paying their property taxes. So where does the revenue, how is it being reduced? Is it because of sale tax and all that kind of thing?
Hotel tax.
Hotel tax and so on. Yeah.
Food, restaurant.
Restaurant revenue.
That's what I kind of thought, but I
Yeah.
wasn't 100% sure.
Yeah, it's a
But
lot of that.
It's understandable that there's less money available, but
Yeah.
we're talking $20,000. We're not talking $150,000.
Yeah.
We're talking
20,000.
That's all that the
Yeah.
assistant gets paid. $20,000 is budgeted for from what I understand, is budgeted for $20,000 for 19 hours a week. So if you look at that chart and compare what Kelly is asking for versus what Truro gets, is ridiculous.
Yeah, and not to
Paul,
bring
you
up
have another statement?
not to bring up a sore subject, but how much money does the Conservation Commission generate in fees, et cetera? Does anybody have an answer to that question? The fees that are charged for permits and all that type of thing, how much money is brought into the town from those sources?
Kelly?
It varies from year to year. I think, I do have the numbers. I keep a track of them. I think we're at about 20,000 a year at the moment. It's gone up to maybe 35,000 some years. So 20 is kind of the lower end of the spectrum. It sits somewhere in the middle there.
So-
And that's a combination of our share of the state revenue that goes into our wetlands fund, which pays for your training and those kind of things, and then the bylaw fees, which go into the general fund.
So you're saying we need to raise the bylaw fees, or we need to raise the fee on the swear jar?
Well, the bylaw fees will go into the general fund, so it benefits the town overall in paying people's salaries, but it doesn't go into the wetland fund. The only way of increasing the wetland fund is through the state's fees.
But doesn't it make
fees? Excuse me, Kelly, through what fees?
The our share of the state fees for a notice of intent.
Okay, thank you. Paul?
So I guess, I don't know, maybe I don't know. So if X number of money is generated from fees, primarily by the Conservation Commission, and they go into the general fund, doesn't it make sense that they go back to the Conservation Commission to support, for example, an assistant to make that department more efficient? I mean, wouldn't that be an argument?
The justification is that it's going to the general fund to pay my salary.
Okay, all right.
So that's
Okay.
where my salary is paid for by the general fund, except for 10,000 each year, which is taken from the wetland fund to supplement that.
Okay, that's all good to know. All right, thank you.
There's one other point. Do you think it's appropriate, Kelly, that we info ID Mark Forrest on our letters of recommendation?
David may have better input on that. He spoke with Mark, and
Yeah, I did. He's
You
the
did?
chairman of the selectmen. I did because my history is that it doesn't always letters don't always get shared with selectmen. So I just CC'd them.
I think that's most appropriate.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, well, any other items that the commission wishes to bring up as far as an updated information? Hearing none,
Yeah, well, I'd like to say one thing.
Please.
It proves that you should not miss a meeting, because when you do, you get volunteered for something.
I wanted
earned
Rick to do it.
$200, but now look what I have.
Anybody else have a comment? Okay, do I hear a motion to adjourn, ladies?
A motion to adjourn at 8:24.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you all very much. Good night.
Good night. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Kelly.
Tom.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Night.